Chapter 1801, Requirement to advance to Grade 1 Supreme Kingdom. Prompt: you can show the level of your Divine Kingdom territory on any channel. In the next second, the announcement of the myriad races resounded in Zhou Zhou and the myriad races' ears. Announcement of the 10,000 races. Congratulations to the prideful Sun Kingdom, prideful Sun Lord, for successfully upgrading his kingdom to the first primary Lord God Kingdom Lord territory of the 10,000 races. Rewards: 10,000 races mythology treasure box +1, primary Lord God Kingdom treasure box +1. Legend degree +1 million. Myth degree +10,000. 10,000 races announcement. Congratulations to the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom God Lord Blazing Sun. 10,000 races announcement. Congratulations to the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom God Lord Blazing Sun. A smile appeared on Zhou Zhou's face. He had finally advanced to a Master God tier advanced grade kingdom. He felt a little emotional. The difficulty of advancing to a Master God tier advanced grade kingdom was really high. It actually took him so long. At the same time, the myriad races of the heavens were numb again. It had not been long since the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom had advanced to a Grade 1 Supreme Kingdom, but now, it had advanced to Master God tier advanced grade kingdom. Isn't this too exaggerated? Some of the lords of the Divine Kingdoms looked at their territory interface that was not even beginner grade Master God tier kingdom and felt like crying. They were both lords, but the difference was too great. The lords of the myriad races were shocked by the rapid advancement of the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom, but they were also very helpless and helpless. This gave them a strong sense of urgency. They had to quickly increase their strength and upgrade their territory and Divine Kingdom levels as soon as possible. This way, they would not be beaten up if they fell behind. Zhou Zhou naturally did not know how these lords of the Divine Kingdom felt. He wouldn't care even if he knew. In this era, so be it if it was a bit more tiring. The illusionist clan was constantly thinking of invading the Supreme Great Cosmos and even the Ultimate Void Great Cosmos. They wouldn't have a chance to get involved even if they wanted to if they didn't get involved, when the illusionist clan entered the Great Cosmo. He had created such a mess for their own good. Zhou Zhou looked at the Lord channel and the Battle channel for a while before closing the channel page and looking at his reward. First was the Mythical Tier Treasure Chest. He opened it and saw a Jade Slip in the Mythical Tier Treasure Chest. Jade Slip. I haven't seen this thing in a long time. Zhou Zhou clicked his tongue in wonder. Then, he picked up the Jade Slip and placed it between his eyebrows. He obtained the contents with a thought. A moment later, he took the Jade Slip, his eyes filled with surprise and joy. There is something like that. This Jade Slip recorded a teleportation array, and the grade of this array had shockingly reached the Supreme Will Realm. A teleportation array at the Supreme Will Realm could already teleport between different great cosmoses. The first thing Zhou Zhou thought of was to build a teleportation array in the Supreme Great Cosmos and the Yellow Heaven Great Cosmos. This way, even if there was any danger on Zhou 16's side, he could quickly send a large number of Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom soldiers to provide support. In addition, he could also build two-way teleportation arrays in the Crimson Great Cosmos, the land of Tianjun's corpse, and the other great cosmoses of the Ultimate Void Great Cosmos. This way, not only could the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom connect to any place in the Supreme Great Cosmos and the Crimson Great Cosmos through the Shadow World, but they could also use the teleportation array to go to the Great Cosmos world in the Ultimate Void Great Cosmos. Think about it a little more. If Zhou Zhou could establish a two-way teleportation array in all the great cosmoses in the Ultimate Void Cosmos, just the path of doing business was enough to make the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom the strongest merchant faction in the Ultimate Void Cosmos. It would make a lot of money. Not to mention the benefits of war, diplomacy, and so on. This Supreme Will Realm teleportation array was completely a treasure with unlimited potential for development. Zhou Zhou was not very worried about any peers. He was not completely ignorant of the Ultimate Void Great Cosmos. According to what he knew, in the Ultimate Void Great Cosmos, only a very small number of forces in the Great Cosmos had such a method of teleporting and trading with each other. Most of the Great Cosmos were like forces that were in seclusion and were extremely resistant to communicating with outsiders. One of the reasons was that the rulers of the Great Cosmos were worried that they would invite wolves into their houses, so they rejected such external communication. Secondly, it was because the materials needed to create such a teleportation array were extremely rare. Even Zhou Zhou could only gather 10 Supreme Will Realm teleportation array materials at most. However, he wasn't worried about this. This was because he believed that after he upgraded Heavenly Fate De Huang to the Supreme Will Realm, he would be able to collect a large number of materials to create teleportation arrays. At that time, his Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom would earn a lot of money. Zhou Zhou was excited, but he looked calm on the surface. With a thought, he told Zhou manage his thoughts and asked him and Zhang Yuankai to discuss how to develop this teleportation array. However, they had to first build the teleportation arrays in the Yellow Heaven Great Cosmos, Tianjun's corpse, and the Crimson Great Cosmos before they developed it. Development could be done slowly, but the teleportation arrays of these great cosmos had to be done first. Then, he opened the treasure chest of the Master God Tier Advanced Grade Kingdom. He looked over and realized that there were 3 world rings inside. He picked up the 3 world rings curiously and realized that there were actually 3 sets of resources to establish a beginner grade Master God Tier Kingdom. With these 3 resources to establish a beginner grade Divine Kingdom, as long as there were enough people and experts, he could create 3 beginner grade Master God Tier Kingdoms out of thin air. Zhou Zhou's eyes lit up and showed. Even though this thing was not very useful in increasing his strength, it could greatly increase the speed at which he increased the level of his Divine Kingdom. Thinking of this, Zhou Zhou did not even care about the last 10 million reputation ratings and 100,000 mythical reputation ratings. He directly opened the Divine Kingdom Advancement Interface. Divine Kingdom Name, Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom. God Lord Blazing Sun. Divine Kingdom Level, Master God Tier Advanced Grade Kingdom. Divine Kingdom Flag, All Stars Cover the Sun. Divine Kingdom Army, Blazing Sun Army, Grade 1 Supreme God, Monster Army, Grade 1 Supreme God, Dragon God Army, Grade 1 Supreme God, 10,000 Races Army, Grade 1 Supreme God, Heavenly Map Army, Grade 1 Supreme God, Homeland Defense Army, Advanced Grade Master God Tier. Requirements for advancing to a Grade 1 Supreme Kingdom, Territory Level to a Grade 1 Supreme Kingdom, 10,000 Grade 1 Supreme God Divine Crystals, 1,000 High-Level Divine Kingdoms under the Crimson Overlord, 0/1,000, 500 High-Level Divine Kingdoms that are not under the Crimson Overlord, 0/500, 20 Beginner Grade God Lord Territories under the Crimson Overlord, 0/20, 10 Beginner God Grade God Lord Territories under the Crimson Overlord, 0/10, 10 God Lord Territories under the 10. God Lords that are not under the Crimson Overlord, 0/20,000, 2,000 High-Level Divine Kingdom Lord factions that have advanced God Grade God Divine Kingdom orders. Zhou Zhou looked carefully at the requirements to advance to Grade 1 Supreme Kingdom. Among them, he was already satisfied with the territorial level, Supreme God Crystal, Independent Regional Territory, Worshipped God Spirit, Racial Divine Artifact, Worshipped Master God, Supreme God Spirit, and Strength. Some of the conditions weren't difficult for him. He could easily satisfy them with some time. Only by conquering 20 beginner grade Master God Tier Lord territories under the Crimson Overlord and 10 beginner grade Master God Tier Lord territories that were not under the Crimson Overlord would it take some time to satisfy. In total, there are 30 beginner grade Master God Tier kingdoms. How many resources would that cost? Zhou Zhou shook his head helplessly. If he didn't already have a new resource channel like the Yellow Heaven Great Cosmos, he would probably be in despair. He would still need a few days to satisfy these 2 conditions even with the new resource channel of the Yellow Heaven Great Cosmos. I'll take my time. Zhou Zhou muttered to himself. He was not anxious at all. He was very calm. Chapter 1802, Grade 4 Supreme God. Mysterious Merchant Chamber of Commerce, Supreme Unique, 1. After the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom advanced to the territory of a Master God Tier Advanced Grade Kingdom, Zhou Zhou returned to the Reincarnation Sacred Palace to cultivate. His will realm was already at the Supreme Will Realm. Under this will realm, he felt that his speed of comprehending laws had increased by more than 10 times. This was normal. After all, will was a system that was a dimension higher than the laws. He, who had already grasped the level of the Supreme Will Realm's will, looked back at the laws like a high school student with peak intelligence. When he looked at the questions for the junior high school examination, he would naturally feel that it was simple. He did not waste time. He was prepared to take this good opportunity to comprehend the laws and strive to advance to the true Supreme Will Realm as soon as possible. The next day, in the Reincarnation Sacred Palace, Zhou Zhou was sitting cross-legged on the Dao Comprehension futon and cultivating. Suddenly, a pure golden light suddenly emitted from his body. There was a faint 95 Supreme King's dragon body swimming on the light, making it look real. After a long while, the pure golden light gradually dissipated. Zhou Zhou slowly opened his eyes. Surprise and joy flashed in his eyes as he sensed his realm. Grade 4 Supreme God realm. He had actually advanced to a Grade 4 Supreme God so quickly. Before last night, he clearly felt that he was still a long way away from the nomological comprehension of a Grade 4 Supreme God. Unexpectedly, this huge distance was quickly filled in just one night. The will level of the Supreme Will realm is indeed convenient for comprehending the power of laws. Zhou Zhou lamented. Next, he only needed to comprehend the complete Lord's law and sublimate it into his first willpower skill. He could use this willpower skill as the core to construct his willpower origin core. Then, he would officially advance to the Supreme Will realm. The Will Origin Core was the foundation of the Supreme Will realm. With the Will Origin Core, a Supreme Will realm expert could completely leave the God Spirit system and become a true Will realm expert. Only experts with willpower techniques were the true peak experts in the ultimate void great cosmos and even the illusionary great cosmos. There was no other criterias. Any God Spirit was like an ant in front of a will level expert. As for eternal realm experts, such an existence no longer existed in any universe. No powerhouse knew where they had gone. The only thing they knew was that they had gone to a world exclusive to them. No one could disturb him, and no one could disturb him. Then, he checked his body again before the smile on his face intensified. Grade 4 Supreme Sacred Body. Not bad, not bad. The Supreme Sacred Body has also improved. Zhou Zhou was very satisfied. Even though the Grade 4 Supreme Sacred Body was only at the level of a Grade 4 Supreme God, it had to be known that a Grade 3 Supreme Sacred Body could allow Zhou Zhou's clones to withstand the attacks of a low-level Supreme Will Realm expert without being injured. A Grade 4 Supreme Sacred Body would only make Zhou Zhou and his clones' bodies stronger. His current physical body was probably comparable to the defense strength of a mid-level defensive Will Holy Artifact. Zhou Zhou, whose life-saving ability had increased again, could not help but feel very happy. Then, he checked the various law skills that he had newly advanced. Firstly, the strongest law skill he used the most was the King. Law skill name, King. Law skill quality, Grade 4 Supreme God. Introduction: as a true God Spirit on the Lord's Law path, you can mark 50% of the territorial subjects and control everything they have, including appearance, bloodline, skills, weapons, law skills, and even illusory fate. When you control everything that the marked subject has, the subject doesn't have to suffer any negative effects. After reading it, Zhou Zhou smiled again. The multiplier increased from 10 to 20 times. It was simply terrifying. Which meant, now that he had activated King, just the augmentation of the Heavenly Blade Will alone could instantly allow him to have the augmentation of all the powers of the 50 Heavenly Blade Wills. Now, even if he didn't use the power of the Yellow River, just using the King could instantly increase his strength to the mid-level Supreme Will realm. This King's improvement was really good. Zhou Zhou was very satisfied. Then, he looked at the second law skill Myriad Method Star Palm. The improvement of the Myriad Method Star Palm was the same as before. It was purely an increase in power. Its power had also increased by 10 times. Coupled with the King whose power had also increased, it could allow Zhou Zhou to fight a high-level Supreme Will Realm expert without relying on any external force. If he used a Will Holy Artifact, his combat strength would be that of a top Supreme Will Realm expert. Zhou Zhou nodded in satisfaction again. As for the third law skill under the heavens, everything is the King's land. Its domain strength has also increased again. Even though the current it was only a Grade 4 Supreme God law skill, it could actually suppress the domain of a mid-level Supreme Will Realm expert at the highest. In addition, the law skill All the land in the world belongs to the King could establish 200 temporary/permanent exclusive territories at the boundless universe level in the law domain when he was a Grade 2 Supreme God. Now, this number had increased to 2,000. Finally, the Grade 2 Supreme God All the land in the world belongs to the King could forcefully make 200 boundless universes his territory every day. Now, this number had increased to 2,000. The subsequent improvements in these abilities were undoubtedly extremely useful for expansion wars. Chapter 1803, Grade 4 Supreme God. Mysterious Merchant Chamber of Commerce, Supreme Unique, 2. As for the law skill Land of Earth, a minister of the King, its improvement was also very simple and crude. Previously, when he was using Grade 1 Supreme God law skills, he could only instigate the incite defection subjects below Grade 1 Supreme God. He could instigate the incite defection subjects below Grade 3 Supreme God realm and below. Finally, there was the fifth law skill the 95 Supreme King. Law skill name, 95 Supreme King. Law skill quality, Grade 4 Supreme God. Introduction to Nomological Skills, you stand at the peak of all lords. You are the King of Lords, the Absolute Supreme. When you face other lords and they are enemies with you, all the abilities that they use against you will be weakened by 50%. There is a 50% chance that they will be ineffective. When the subjects under your command fight with you, their combat strength will increase by 500%. Other lords will have a natural sense of reverence and even submission when facing you. There is a certain chance that the other party will agree to your opinions and thoughts. Those who are your enemies will feel fear from the bottom of their hearts. Only those with extremely strong willpower will be immune to this fear. You can transform into the 95 Supreme King Dragon God. Your body is invincible and indestructible. Unless all the soldiers under you die or the difference in strength between you and the other party is so great that it can't be made up for, you will definitely not die. When you transform into the 95 Supreme King Dragon God and appear on the battlefield, you will randomly give your soldiers the supreme blessing to strengthen their various abilities. Zhou Zhou nodded slightly after reading it. The effect of the 95 Supreme King's nomological skills had also increased greatly. Especially in terms of basic combat power, it directly increased from 300% to 500%. In the future, the soldiers under him could fight even more ferociously on the battlefield. Braveness. He looked at the 5 law skills again and was very satisfied. As expected of a nomological skill with the potential to transcend willpower. Every improvement didn't disappoint him. Then, he looked at his newly upgraded Supreme Unique Lord Talent. It was also the only Lord Talent among his 3 developmental Lord Talents that had yet to be promoted: the Mysterious Caravan. Lord Talent, Mysterious Merchant Chamber of Commerce, Supreme Unique. Mysterious Caravan, your territory has a mysterious chamber of commerce blessed by the Supreme Will and exclusive to you. It controls all the mysterious caravans in the Supreme Great Cosmos. Other than combat orders, all members of the mysterious caravan have to listen to your other orders. You can send them out to buy the resources needed by your territory or sell the goods made by your territory's subjects. Supreme Blessing Mysterious Trading. In the eyes of your subjects, the mysterious caravan is just an ordinary caravan that helps the territory carry out transactions. In the eyes of outsiders, the mysterious caravan is a special caravan that will never be known. Outsiders will never know who it is working for or what their ultimate goal is. Supreme Blessing Treasure Hunting. The mysterious caravan has been blessed by the Supreme Will. It's extremely easy to buy rare and valuable random treasures during the business process. Supreme Blessing Mysterious Treasure Vault. All the wealth and treasures accumulated since the birth of the Mysterious Merchant Chamber of Commerce are stored in the Mysterious Treasure Vault. However, it has been taken away by the Supreme Will. You can store the wealth and treasures obtained by the Mysterious Merchant Chamber of Commerce through trade again. Supreme Blessing Unlimited Right of Passage. Kingdom level. The mysterious caravan can conduct business in any territory below the kingdom level. Even if it's a closed area that rejects living beings from the outside world, the mysterious caravan has the right to enter and carry out their business activities. After reading it, Zhou Zhou nodded in satisfaction. After the mysterious caravan advanced to the Supreme Unique Lord Talent, it indeed became the Mysterious Merchant Chamber of Commerce and controlled all the members of the mysterious caravan in the Supreme Great Cosmos. According to his understanding, the Mysterious Merchant Chamber of Commerce had the largest merchant faction in the myriad worlds. With such a merchant faction, even if he did nothing in the future, he could lie down and become the richest person in the Supreme Great Cosmos. Of course. Fruit Noello. Naturally, he would not do nothing. This was the largest merchant faction in the Supreme Great Cosmos. As long as he used this merchant faction well, it would be at least 20% easier for him to conquer the entire Supreme Great Cosmos in the future. Even though this 20% difficulty ratio was small, it could save Zhou Zhou countless time, energy, and resources. The second function, mysterious trading, did not change. Zhou Zhou naturally had no objections to this. It was not a bad thing to keep a low profile when doing business outside. In any case, his identity as a mysterious merchant could be revealed if he wanted to. It would not affect anything else. The Supreme Blessing Treasure Hunting went from easy to extremely easy. The efficiency of obtaining treasures increased greatly. When Zhou Zhou saw the mysterious treasure vault, the corners of his mouth couldn't help but twitch. Good Lord, had all the wealth and treasures been taken away by the Supreme Will? He could understand. The Mysterious Merchant Chamber of Commerce used to be the money bag of the Supreme Will after all. Now that this money bag belonged to him, it was naturally normal for the Supreme Will to take away the things inside. It originally belonged to him after all. It was impossible for it to benefit him. However, even though he understood, Zhou Zhou still felt like an ordinary person had missed out on 5 million yuan. He shook his head and threw away this strange thought. He looked at the next function: unlimited rite of passage, Supreme Force. Zhou Zhou pondered for a few seconds before a smile appeared on his face. He muttered to himself, this function should be very useful to the other multiverse factions in the ultimate void Great Cosmos. As for the Supreme Great Cosmos and the Crimson Great Cosmos, the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom was the only Grade 1 Supreme faction in these two universes. It did not even have a trade partner, so it was naturally not of much use. In short, Zhou Zhou was very satisfied with the promotion of the mysterious Chamber of Commerce. With a thought, he saw Zhang Fugui appear in front of him. At this moment, Zhang Fugui was different from before. He had actually changed into a luxurious golden red outfit. He looked extraordinary but very festive and noble. Zhou Zhou clicked his tongue. This guy's appearance became prettier with every increment in strange of his lord talent increased. He did not care much. He smiled and said, the mysterious Merchant Chamber of Commerce has already been upgraded. Tell me more about the current situation of the mysterious Merchant Chamber of Commerce. Yes, Your Majesty. Zhang Fugui, who had changed his attire, spoke and did things in a manner that was more in line with etiquette. His attitude towards Zhou Zhou was also more respectful. Anyone who looked at his amiable face would have a good impression of him. He carefully explained the current situation of the mysterious Merchant Chamber of Commerce in the myriad worlds. Not surprisingly, the mysterious Merchant Chamber of Commerce was extremely powerful in the myriad worlds. No matter which lord faction it was, even the Sun Divine Court and the Great Lunar Court, they were extremely friendly to the mysterious Merchant Chamber of Commerce. However, there was one flaw. In the past, when the mysterious caravan was in danger, they could invite experts to help them escape danger. At most, they could even invite low-level Supreme Will Realm experts to help. But now that the owner of the mysterious Merchant Chamber of Commerce had changed from a Supreme Will to Zhou Zhou, the mysterious Merchant Chamber of Commerce could no longer invite top-notch experts to protect the mysterious Merchant Chamber of Commerce like before. Zhou Zhou frowned when he heard that, but he quickly relaxed. This situation was very reasonable. The Supreme Will powerhouses who were invited to escort them were all subordinates of the Supreme Will after all. Whatever the Supreme Will asked them to do, they naturally had to obey. However, now that the owner of the mysterious Merchant Chamber of Commerce had become him, he naturally did not have the face to let those Supreme Will Realm experts continue to help. Even if he was now the successor of the Supreme Will, the dignity of the successor was still not as useful as the Supreme Will. Moreover, he was not even a Supreme Will Realm expert now. How could he have the face to ask those experts to help? He thought for a moment and quickly had an idea. Zhang Fugui, can you contact those Supreme Will Realm experts that the mysterious Merchant Chamber of Commerce could invite in the past? Zhou Zhou asked. Yes. Zhang Fugui immediately said respectfully. Sure. Zhou Zhou nodded and said, send a message to those Supreme Will Realm experts with this Emperor's identity. Tell them that even though the current owner of the mysterious Merchant Chamber of Commerce has changed, we are willing to remunerate them to protect the mysterious Merchant Chamber of Commerce. We guarantee that the remuneration would satisfy them. Things would be good for those who can agree to this Emperor's hiring. It doesn't matter if they are unwilling to agree. Let's do it. Zhou Zhou said in a low voice. Yes. Zhang Fugui said respectfully. Chapter 1804, New Supreme Will Realm Expert. 1. Zhou Zhou closed the Lord Talent interface and stood up to leave the Reincarnation Sacred Palace to Mu Gu's residence. Mu Gu was drinking tea at that moment. When he saw Zhou Zhou, he immediately bowed respectfully to him. Zhou Zhou nodded and drank tea and chatted with Mu Gu. A moment later, a golden stream of light flew out of the Scarlet Brood Mother and landed on the ground. It was Wu Xin. When he saw Zhou Zhou, he immediately said respectfully. Greetings, Your Majesty. Zhou Zhou nodded. Then, Wu Xin did not waste his breath and handed the 3 world rings filled with loots to Zhou Zhou. Zhou Zhou took it and sent his willpower into it to take a look. Then, a smile appeared on his face. Even though this was not the first time he saw this 120 Guy Unit recruitment books and 120 Guy Unit class change certificate, he could not help but be very happy. He took a deep breath and handed the class change certificate to Wu Xin, asking him to find reserve recruits and change their class to Supreme God Realm soldiers and Supreme Holy Mage gods. As for Zhou Zhou, he immediately left Mu Gu's blessed land and flew out of the Divine Kingdom world to the Gate of Summoning. He called over a Grade 1 Supreme God level cosmic battleship as usual. Then, he threw all 120 Guy unit recruitment books into the Gate of Summoning. Then, he spent 100 Grade 1 Supreme God Divine Crystals to recruit them and arranged for them to be in this cosmic battleship. Then, Zhou Zhou spent another 100 Grade 1 Supreme God Divine Crystals to summon today's subject. This time, he summoned a total of more than 220 billion subjects. He summoned more than 50 billion subjects than usual, including 15 Grade 1 Supreme God spirits. Then, he went to Jade Capital Immortal Mountain alone. After spending 1000 low-tier deity-level elementary grade divine crystals, he summoned 100 heavenly soldiers, heavenly generals, and heavenly venerates of the capital units. At this moment, swoosh, 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 swoosh. A total of 2,555,619 nomological pillars of light soared into the sky from the direction of the Reincarnation Sacred Palace. Right on the heels of that, another 50 completely different starry sky phenomena appeared in the sky filled with stars. It was the cosmic phenomenon of a master god tier becoming a supreme god. Just as the god spirits of the myriad worlds were about to be shocked. Boom! Boom! Two beams of light of different colors shot into the starry sky. Under the illumination of these two pillars of light, the sun star and the great lunar star actually took the initiative to restrain their light, making these two pillars of light the only two greatest sources of light in the myriad worlds. At this moment, all the living beings in the myriad worlds, even the blind, could see the existence of these two pillars of light. This also made them the only two lights in the supreme great cosmos. At the same time, they, who saw the two pillars of light, came to a realization. This was a phenomenon. And it was not ordinary. It was the phenomenon of a quasi-supreme will realm expert advancing to the low-level supreme will realm. At this moment in the myriad worlds, from the experts with willpower to the ordinary life forms, they were all shocked. Especially those experts who knew the meaning of the supreme will realm, they were even more shocked to the point of ecstasy. A new supreme will realm expert has been born in our supreme great cosmos. And there are two of them. Oh my god, am I dreaming? I also feel like I'm in a dream. This is a supreme will realm expert. How long has it been since a supreme will realm expert appeared in our supreme great cosmos? At least 1 billion years. Doesn't Lord Reincarnation will count? The Reincarnation will is nothing. He can be considered to have inherited the inheritance of a supreme will realm expert. He can at most be considered the successor. With the Reincarnation will in our supreme great cosmos, it's equivalent to restoring a supreme will realm expert at most. It can't be considered a new supreme will realm expert at all. What surprised me is not that a new supreme will realm expert was born, but that two new supreme will realm experts were actually born at once. Moreover, did you guys notice? The source of these two new supreme will realm experts is actually the blazing sun divine capital. I have a terrifying guess. These two supreme will realm experts were probably nurtured by the reserve supreme lord, the common people's regal. Stop joking. How can a supreme will realm expert suffer such humiliation? What's with being nurtured by the common people's regal? The common people's regal is only a supreme god now. Where did he get the ability and resources to nurture a supreme will realm expert? Can you bunch of supporters of the common people's regal use your brains before you speak? Do you want to take a gamble? I'll bet that these two supreme will realm experts were nurtured by the common people's regal. Fine, I'll bet. Who's afraid of who? I definitely won't lose, okay? Stop arguing. I'm the trainer officer of the Sun Divine Court. Just now, His Majesty, the Regal Great Solar, already found out from the Supreme Will Realm that these two new Supreme Will Realm experts were indeed nurtured by the common people's regal. There's no dispute about this matter. You're not allowed to speak ill of the great common people's regal. Ah! Was he really nurtured by the great common people's regal? How can that be fake? Moreover, you don't know, right? Even though Lord Common People's Regal is only a supreme god now, he has already killed a high-level supreme will realm expert. Moreover, he was killed when he was a grade 3 supreme god realm expert. With this ability, what's the point of nurturing two supreme will realm experts? As soon as this news was released, all the god spirits in the myriad worlds were stunned. The common people's regal actually defeated a supreme will realm expert as a supreme god? My god, if this was true, the matter of nurturing 2 supreme will realm experts was indeed a small matter. Chapter 1805, New Supreme Will Realm Expert 2. The God Spirits sighed. They thought about the process of the common people's regal's rise and suddenly felt that what some of the God Spirits said might really be possible. This made them sigh and look forward to the future of the common people's regal. They all realized something today, no matter what. No matter how much they envied the rising star of the common people's regal, the rise of this rising star was already unstoppable for them. Furthermore, they were already certain. The common people's regal was definitely not inferior to Lord of 10,000 Evils, the Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord, and even God King Heaven Punishment. Even they could not create 50 new supreme gods in a day after all. Such a magnificent feat was already an unbelievable event that overturned their worldview. This was because even God King Heaven Punishment and the Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord had never done such a magnificent feat. The God King Heaven Punishment and the Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord had only defeated low-level Supreme Will Realm experts back then after all. Furthermore, they were both Grade 4 Supreme Gods or Quasi-Supreme Will Realm experts back then. Where was the common people's regal? He could kill a high-level Supreme Will Realm expert when he was at the Grade 3 Supreme God realm. When the two sides were compared, it was obvious who was superior and who was inferior. The God Spirits were still discussing the common people's regal and the newly advanced Supreme Will Realm experts. Zhou Zhou also laughed. Now that he, who was a Grade 4 Supreme God and had grasped the level of the Supreme Will Realm's will, was getting closer and closer to the goal of a Supreme Will Realm expert, he had even naturally grasped some magical abilities that only those at the Supreme Will Realm could master. For example, he no longer needed to watch the Lord channel and the battle channel of the myriad races to know what the living beings discussing him were thinking. Even the high and mighty Supreme Gods had no secrets in front of him. When he truly advanced to the Supreme Will Realm, he could even know what all the living beings in the Supreme Great Cosmos were thinking with a thought. It was even to the extent that he only needed to focus a little to be able to see the other timelines and know what the living beings in the other timelines were thinking. This was the power of a Supreme Will Realm expert. At this moment, these new Master God tiers, Supreme Gods, and the 2 new Supreme Will Realm experts had already flown over. They surrounded him according to their strength. The closest to him were naturally the 2 Supreme Will Realm experts. Even though they were experts from another universe from Tianjun's corpse, they were still very respectful to Zhou Zhou. The Fireheart will greets your majesty. Dao Breaking will greets your majesty. Of these 2 Supreme Will Realm experts, one was surrounded by extremely terrifying scarlet flames, and the other held a divine spear. They had a sharpness and temperament that could fight the heavens and the earth. At that moment, the 2 Supreme Will Realm experts, they bowed respectfully to Zhou Zhou. Even though Zhou Zhou was only a Grade 4 Supreme God now, they did not dare to be impudent at all. They had seen with their own eyes that Zhou 11 and Zhou 11 could easily kill a high-level Supreme Will Realm expert. As the main body, Zhou Zhou's strength was definitely even more terrifying. They did not feel that they had anything to be proud of in front of His Majesty. Zhou Zhou looked at them and smiled. Congratulations on your advancement. From now on, the 2 of you will be the 2nd and 3rd guardians of this Emperor's blazing sun divine kingdom. As for the specific treatment, you will be satisfied. Thank you, Your Majesty. The 2 Supreme Will Realm experts were very excited. They knew how generous His Majesty was. Since it was said that they could be satisfied, it would definitely not disappoint them. They could not help but look forward to it. In the surrounding crowd, when the Will of the Heavenly Blade saw this scene, it felt a little emotional. He had just joined the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom yesterday and became the first and only Supreme Will Realm worshipper of the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom. Unexpectedly, only the next day, the He prefix on him was removed. The Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom directly had 3 Supreme Will Realm consecrations. The growth speed of this country was simply unbelievable. He searched through the memories in his mind, but he could not find a country that grew at the same speed as the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom. Even the Sun Divine Court and the Great Lunar Court were no exception. At this moment, Zhou Zhou looked at the Will of the Heavenly Blade and beckoned for it to come over. Even though the Will of the Heavenly Blade was puzzled, it still came over obediently. Zhou Zhou smiled when he saw the 3 Supreme Will Realm experts standing in front of him. Then, he took out 3 world rings and handed them to them. Since it's the offering of this Emperor's Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom, this is the customary greeting gift. Keep it well. Zhou Zhou said with a smile. Thank you, Your Majesty. The Will of the Heavenly Blade, was not surprised by this. They had long known that His Majesty would reward every new powerhouse, especially the new Master God tier and Supreme God, for their advancement. There were also promotion rewards for the other levels, but they were not personally given by His Majesty, but distributed by the experts of the Blazing Sun Divine Court. They was only curious about one thing. What kind of greeting gift would His Majesty give a Supreme Will Realm expert like them? Even though it did not matter if it was expensive or not, they could not hide their anticipation. His Majesty's generosity was famous in the myriad worlds after all. With anticipation, they entered the world rings with their power will and quickly saw the rewards inside. They trembled, their eyes filled with shock and ecstasy. That was because in their world ring was a complete set of will holy artifacts. Are you satisfied with this greeting gift? Zhou Zhou asked with a smile. If it was in the past, he definitely wouldn't have been able to produce this set of will holy artifacts. His heavenly fate De Huang could not cover the supreme will realm after all. However, after the battle with the fearless king, the fearless king's treasury had greatly enriched Zhou Zhou's treasury. It had also allowed Zhou Zhou to obtain a large number of will holy artifacts. That was why he could take out these 18 will holy artifacts as a greeting gift for them. However, he didn't give it away for nothing. Don't be in a hurry to be agitated. This isn't a free gift. This emperor lent it to you at the last minute. Zhou Zhou said, when you accumulate enough military merits and completely exchange them for them, you will truly have it. Before that, you only have the right to use it. Thank you, Your Majesty. The will of the heavenly blade and the others immediately knelt down to Zhou Zhou. Even if it's the right to use it, we are extremely grateful. Your Majesty, don't worry. We will definitely accumulate military merits as soon as possible and strive to exchange this set of will holy artifacts into our hands as soon as possible. The three Supreme Will Realm experts, they were very excited. Even the will of the heavenly blade, who had the best temperament, was no exception. This was a will holy artifact. How precious was it? Among all the Supreme Will Realm experts in the entire Supreme Great Cosmos, there were definitely less than 5 Supreme Will Realm experts who had a complete set of will holy artifacts. As for these 3 newly advanced Supreme Will Realm experts, they had a complete set of will holy artifacts. If word got out, the other Supreme Will Realm experts would probably die of envy. Most importantly, with this set of will holy artifacts, even though they were only newly advanced low-level Supreme Will Realm experts, their combat strength was definitely not inferior to true mid-level Supreme Will Realm experts. With such strength, not only could they protect themselves among Supreme Will Realm experts, they could also better earn military merits for His Majesty. Zhou Zhou nodded slightly. That was his intention. He hoped that they could contribute more to the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom for this set of will holy artifacts. Then, he chatted with the other newly promoted god spirits for a while and rewarded each of them with a set of divine artifacts that matched their paths before letting them leave. Then, he began to calculate the forces under him. Chapter 1806, Total Force. Eternal Continent. Arrangements for the future. 1. Zhou Fei calculated the strength of his main combat army after they left. His original military strength was 342 Guy units 2,587 capital units 3,476,324,839,891 soldiers, 61,282,439,7607 god spirits, 74,351,819 true god tiers, 3,823,161 master gods, 857 supreme gods, 89 quasi-supreme will realm experts, and 1 supreme will realm expert. Including the 240 new Guy unit recruits, 100 capital units heavenly soldiers, 2,555,619 new master god tiers, 131 new supreme gods, and 2 supreme will realm experts. The troops under him had already reached 582 Guy units 2,687 capital units 3,476, 324, 734, 839, 891 soldiers, 6,128,243,007,607 god spirits, 74,351,819 true god tiers, 6,378,780 master gods, 988 supreme gods, 89 quasi-supreme will realm experts, and 3 supreme will realm experts. Zhou Zhou nodded in satisfaction after reading it. The troops under he had already reached 582 Guy units, 2,687 capital units, 347.6 trillion, 324.7 billion, 34.83 million, 9,891 soldiers, 61,282.43 billion, 7,607 god spirits, 74.35 billion, 1,819 true god tiers, 6,378,780 supremacy gods, 988 supreme gods, 89 quasi-supreme will realm experts, and 3 supreme will realm experts. Not to mention anything else, just the supreme gods alone had reached the level of more than 900 to nearly 1,000. There were only more than 10,000 supreme gods in the entire supreme great cosmos. The number of supreme gods under him had already reached 1/10 of the total number of supreme gods in the entire supreme great cosmos. It was simply terrifying. As for the last 3 supreme will realm experts, he found them more and more pleasing to the eye. Once him, who had a grade 4 supreme god, activated the king, not only would the power of these 3 supreme will realm experts be copied into him, but it would also directly increase by 50 times. Which meant, the moment he activated the king, he could immediately possess the strength of 150 supreme will realm experts. Even though the combined strength of these experts might not be able to immediately allow his strength to reach the high-level supreme will realm, but it should be extremely close. When the number of newly advanced supreme will realm experts under he reached 10, he believed that he could reach the high-level supreme will realm without relying on external forces like the Yellow River Slate. With the help of will holy artifacts, law skills, and other powers, even if his main body was only a grade 4 supreme god, it was enough to be invincible among supreme will realm experts. On the other side, at the Chaos Sea, Zhou Marshal had already brought Thanatos, Nazario, and 10,000 Master God tier advanced grade God spirits to the Chaos Sea. Today, the space-time chaotic divine demons, they, had brought a total of 1,572 chaotic divine demons. Zhou Marshal gave the space-time chaotic divine demon, they 6,288 Master God tier divine artifacts. Then, he killed more than 1,000 chaotic divine demons with a single palm and obtained 6,308 units of chaotic divine artifacts. Following that, they made another trip to the time ruins of Chaos of Death and obtained another 170 units of chaos divine treasures. Zhou Marshal nodded slightly. Even though his main body was currently expending a large number of chaos divine treasures to support the local lords to advance to the Master God tier kingdom. Fortunately, the number of chaos divine treasures he earned every day was also increasing day by day. From the current income, even if he supported the local lords with all his might, the chaos divine treasure in his hands would definitely increase. Supporting a true god tier elementary grade territory to advance to a master god tier elementary grade territory only required 500 chaos divine treasures after all. Even if he advanced to master god tier intermediate grade territory, he only needed 1,000 chaos divine treasures. It only required 5,000 chaos divine treasures to advance to the territory of a master god tier advance grade. His main body now had nearly 60,000 chaos divine treasures, enough to support more than 100 high-level divine kingdoms to advance to the master god tier kingdom. Not bad, not bad. Zhou Marshal was very satisfied. His previous worries seemed to be unnecessary. His main body now had the strength to support a large number of master god tier kingdoms in the Supreme Great Cosmos and the Crimson Great Cosmos. Then, he would take them for himself and turn them into firewood for his territory to advance. The Yellow River region. Zhou Fight came here alone, and then he saw the reincarnation will, who was also here. Brother. Zhou Marshal said in surprise. Brother. When the reincarnation will saw Zhou Marshal, it smiled and waved he over. Zhou Marshal arrived beside him. The reincarnation will looked at the Yellow River region in front of him and sighed, this region is finally back in our hands. Actually, now that I think about it, it's hard for me to imagine so many things happening in such a short period of time. Fortunately, everything returned to normal with your help. When the reincarnation will reached the end, his gaze was complicated. Only the he that he cared about was gone. Zhou Marshal saw the emotions in the reincarnation will's heart and comforted, everything will be fine. Reincarnation will looked at Zhou Fight and shook his head with a smile. He didn't feel too sad. Even though the death of the will of the Yellow River made he extremely sad, after seeing the miracle created by his younger brother these days, he gradually began to believe that the will of the Yellow River could be revived by the common people's regal. Since there was hope, why should he be sad? The reincarnation will only hope that day would come soon. Now that the Yellow River region has returned to unity, how do you plan to manage this region in the future? The reincarnation will smiled and said. I've already accepted the inheritance of Lord Yellow River's will. I know how Lord Yellow River's will managed this land in the past. Let's follow Lord Yellow River's previous management method. It's just that it's all my people. Zhou Zhou said with a smile. The situation in the Yellow River region was special. It was the front line of the land of reincarnation of the undead, netherworld, in the myriad worlds. The local management method of the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom was not suitable for it. The management method of the Yellow River's will that had been tested for countless years was the best management method. In that case, Zhou Fight naturally would not change it to show his ability. Chapter 1807 Total Force. Eternal Continent. Arrangements for the future. 2. Xiao Ru and Cao Sui were the best way to deal with them. However, even with the rules and regulations, with the various lord talents and other buffs of the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom, he believed that under the lead of his main body, the Yellow River region would definitely develop 1,000, 10,000, or even more times better than before. One day, the Yellow River region, the front line of the Netherworld, might surpass the true land of reincarnation, the Netherworld. Joe Marshall was very confident about this. When the reincarnation will saw the confidence in Joe Marshall's eyes, it could not help but feel very satisfied and gratified. What he admired the most was his brother's confidence and even his conceit. He believed that under the lead of his younger brother, the Yellow River region would definitely develop faster and better than under the lead of the Yellow River's will. Brother, don't worry. The reincarnation will patted his chest and promised confidently, my netherworld is right beside the Yellow River region. If you can't find time sometimes, as long as I'm around, I'll definitely protect the Yellow River region and never let anything like the illusionary world invade it again. Zhou Fight nodded. He still trusted his brother very much. This brother's territory was close to the Yellow River region. He would indeed need to take care of him in the future. Of course, he would also take care of his brother. My main body has already decided to station a new clone in the Yellow River region to protect the safety of the Yellow River region. Zhou Fight continued. That's good. Reincarnation was amused. Then I'll come and drink with him often in the future. He already knew the relationship between the main body and the clone, and he also knew that the main body was busy. And drinking with the clone was no different from drinking with the main body. Therefore, he didn't care if the person drinking was the main body. Anyway, the main body would understand. Zhou Fight nodded and asked curiously, after the failure of the illusionist clan in the Yellow River region, have there been any new developments? Those guys won't let this go. The reincarnation will turn serious when he heard that. He said coldly, they will definitely think of leading a stronger army to raid the Yellow River region or other places after this failure. The illusionist clan is such an opponent. But we won't let our guard down. If they still dares to invade our supreme great cosmos, they will definitely make they experience a painful defeat before returning in a sorry state. I'll do my part then. Zhou Fight said. The illusionist clan was also his enemy. His nest was in the supreme great cosmos, so he naturally would not tolerate these guys coveting the supreme great cosmos. Reincarnation will patted Zhou Fight's shoulder and smiled. There was no need to say anything. Then, he asked, brother, now that the Yellow River region has been unified, what are your plans for the future? Continue upgrading the territory. Zhou Fight said with a smile. He thought for a moment and said, in addition, the Supreme Will has invited me to the river of time and space. I plan to take a look later. He naturally had not forgotten. The Supreme Will had said that he had left an opportunity for him to advance to the Supreme Will realm in the river of time and space. Now that he was already a grade 4 Supreme God, he was not far from the quasi-Supreme Will realm. It was time to pick up his opportunity. Moreover, he also wanted to train in the long river of time and space for a period of time after advancing to the Supreme Will realm. It was said that the river of time and space could speed up his contact with his alternate timeline main body, thereby increasing his cultivation speed in the Supreme Will realm. Since Zhou Zhou's main body could not come, he would let him, his strongest combat clone, come. The reincarnation will immediately understood. He felt that the Supreme Will was giving the common people's regal and the spring-autumn Dharma Lord a chance to train. This would determine the order of the two successors. Just like Lord of 10,000 Evils and the common people's regal. The common people's regal went to the ultimate void battlefield controlled by Lord of 10,000 Evils. Not long after, not only did the ultimate void battlefield return, but the common people's regal also directly advanced from the Supreme Lord's 4th Reserve Army to the 3rd Reserve Army. The ranking of the Lord of 10,000 Evils fell. Still, worry appeared in Reincarnation Will's eyes. The Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord was not something that a half-baked Supreme Lord Reserve Army like Lord of 10,000 Evils could compare to. In terms of realm alone, the Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord had already entered the Supreme Will realm for many years and was a mid-level Supreme Will realm expert. It was said that until now, Lord of 10,000 Evils only had the strength of a quasi-Supreme Will realm expert. The difference between the two was like the difference between heaven and earth. It was not easy for his younger brother to surpass the Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord and obtain a high-level Supreme Lord Reserve Army status. However, he looked at Zhou Fight and didn't say anything to deal a blow. Instead, he said seriously, "The Supreme Will probably wants you to compete with the Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord. Brother, I believe you. I think as long as you are given enough time, you will definitely be able to surpass the Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord and become the Supreme Lord Reserve Army to face God King Heaven punishment." Zhou Fight looked at the Reincarnation Will for a long time. He didn't expect him to believe him so much. He spoke frankly. In fact, he did not have the confidence to surpass the Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord and become the 2nd Reserve Army of the Supreme Lord. In terms of the initial Lord talent, it was said that the Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord had the only mythical tier Lord talent as soon as he awakened it. As for God King Heaven punishment, even though he had the same Lord talent as the Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord in terms of his first awakening, he had the only mythical tier Lord talent. However, he had advanced to the Supreme Will realm when he was more than 100 years old and became the existence that had advanced to the Supreme Will realm in the shortest time in the history of the Supreme Great Cosmos. His cultivation talent was comparable to or even higher than the Supreme Will realm Lord talent. Back then, he had only awakened the legendary tier Lord talent. In terms of talent, the main body also knew that it was inferior to these two. However, in terms of catching up, the main body was very confident that it would not be inferior to them in the future. Therefore, he looked at the Reincarnation Will and nodded seriously. He didn't say anything modest. Instead, he said seriously, "I look forward to the day that brother says." The Reincarnation Will grinned. For some reason, when Zhou Fight said this, he inexplicably felt that he could do it. Then, Zhou Fight chatted for a while before the two god spirits separated. Zhou Fight headed to the river of time and space alone. The Reincarnation Will return to the netherworld. The Yellow River domain had just returned. He needed to do many things to connect with the Yellow River domain. Just taking back the ownerless souls that were scattered throughout the myriad worlds was a huge business that would take a long time. After a while, a clone of Zhou Zhou arrived at the Yellow River region. He was a newly created clone of Zhou Zhou, named Zhou 18. His mission was also very simple. He would preside over the Yellow River region, manage the matters here, and receive the benefits of the Yellow River region, such as the Yellow River fish. Of course, the most important thing was to prevent trouble from happening in the Yellow River realm again. Since he had already become the Lord of the Yellow River region, Zhou Zhou would not fool this responsibility. Therefore, Zhou 18 would be permanently stationed here. Unless there was something extremely important, he wouldn't go out to do anything else. This was a boundless scarlet-yellow floating continent. On this floating continent, there was an illusory river that was billions of light years long and reflected countless space-time phantoms. It flowed on this continent without changing since ancient times. Countless ancient existences, buildings, epic tiers, mythical tiers, lost territories, and forgotten civilizations could find traces of them on this continent. There were living beings, things, and everything that had existed since the birth of the chaotic great cosmos. As long as they existed in the world, one could find traces of them or even their main bodies here. Even though they could no longer be revived in the current world and might even have been forgotten, they would always be recorded here. At this moment, thud! A golden door appeared in the sky above the continent. Then, the door opened and a figure walked out. He was wearing the regal dragon sacred robe. He had a tall figure and perfect looks. Even a deva could not compare to this person's looks. It was difficult for life forms in the world to forget his looks with a single look. They might even be infatuated. He had an extremely noble and supreme aura. Just by standing there, others would feel that he was the only one in the world. All life forms and even other existences in the world had to respect he as the only De Huang. He was Zhou Fight, who had just arrived. The Eternal Mainland. The River of Time and Space. Zhou Fight looked at the floating continent and said softly, "I'm coming." Chapter 1808 Fishing Man Spring Autumn Dharma Lord. 1. Zhou Fight walked on the eternal continent. He looked down at the ancient continent and the various fantasy scenes that appeared and disappeared in the long river of time and space. His eyes were filled with surprise. Is this the eternal mainland and the river of time and space? It's indeed magical. Zhou Fight nodded slightly. Even though he already knew what the eternal continent and the river of time and space looked like through the inheritance in his mind. However, the impact of knowing and seeing it with their own eyes was completely different. It was even more impactful and shocking to see in the main world. At this moment, a figure flew over from below and quickly arrived in front of Zhou Fight. He was golden in color and held a divine sword in both hands. There was a towering sword intent on him as he looked at Zhou Fight with a sharp gaze. You're a swordsman too, right? Fight me. He said coldly. Zhou Fight looked at him and found him very familiar. He looked at the other party for a few seconds and said, You're the Absolute Heaven Sword God. The Absolute Heaven Sword God. A supreme god from 2 million years ago. This god loved to challenge Sword Dao experts when he was alive. He had once announced to the myriad worlds that there was only one way for him to die in the future, and that was to die at the hands of a Sword Dao expert stronger than him. Later on, he did as he wished. He had finally challenged a swordsman stronger than him. However, what was laughable was that when this fellow was about to be killed, he actually cried and begged his opponent for mercy, hoping that the other party would spare his life. However, the other party did not spare him. After mocking him, he killed Absolute Heaven Sword God cleanly. The Absolute Heaven Sword God had created a set of Absolute Heaven Sword Dao himself. After he died, this set of Grade 3 Supreme God Realm inheritance was lost. Zhou Fight did not expect to encounter a Sword Dao expert from history. Zhou Fight did not expect to encounter a Sword Dao expert from history. I don't want to fight you. Zhou Fight shook his head. He had the combat strength of a top Supreme Will Realm expert. Fighting a Grade 3 Supreme God Realm? He couldn't afford to lose face. Are you afraid? Absolute Heaven Sword God sneered. The corners of Zhou Fight's mouth twitched. He could not be bothered with the other party and continued flying forward. He was going to find the Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord. He did not want to waste time with this guy. However, at this moment, such a timid person is not worthy of being my opponent. The Absolute Heaven Sword God sneered. Zhou Fight raised his eyebrows. He turned around and glanced at him. The Absolute Heaven Sword God turned to look at him as if he sensed something. The two of them looked at each other. Bang! The Absolute Heaven Sword God exploded and instantly dissipated into the world. I don't want to talk to you. You jumped on it. You're courting death. Zhou Fight mumbled. This guy's death in history was really not in vain. MHM. He suddenly saw a flowing yellow light floating where the Absolute Heaven Sword God had died. Zhou Fight raised his hand and saw the light fly over and land in his hand. The power of his will entered and he knew what this light represented. This light contained the Absolute Heaven Sword God's Grade 3 Supreme God Realm inheritance Absolute Heaven Sword Dao. Killing a historical life form that exists on the Eternal Continent can actually obtain the inheritance left behind by the other party? Or should I say, important memories. Zhou Fight was surprised. He suddenly looked down at the Eternal Continent. On this ancient continent, there were at least 1 million supreme gods like the Absolute Heaven Sword God. As for the historical life forms at the level of Master God tier, True God tier, and even ordinary God spirits, there was no end to them. Even with Zhou Fight's current level of willpower, he felt that the number could be said to be endless. He thought of the Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord who guarded the river of time and space. Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord has guarded the river of time and space for countless years. The pavilion closest to the water gets the moonlight first. It's unknown how much heritage he has accumulated over the years to guard such a treasure land. The more Zhou Fight thought about it, the more shocked he became. That must have been an unimaginable number. At this moment, third brother. A clear and smiling young man's voice sounded in Zhou Fight's ears. Come quickly, come quickly. I'll wait for you in the myriad world's chaos pool. It was Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord's voice. Zhou Fight was a little surprised. Then, he smiled and said, I'll be right there. Myriad world's chaos pool. Zhou Fight muttered this name in his heart. Then, he vaguely knew where this place was. He did not find it strange. He immediately followed the feeling in his heart and flew towards the myriad world's chaos pool. On the way, he had also encountered many historical powerhouses who had appeared in front of him. There were even powerhouses from different timelines. The strongest among them was even a low-level Supreme Will Realm powerhouse. However, these fellows didn't stop he from advancing. Instead, he obtained many benefits. The greatest benefit was naturally the inheritance of the low-level Supreme Will Realm expert. When Zhou Fight obtained the inheritance of this Supreme Will Realm expert, he was naturally very happy. Even he did not have many legacies of this level after all. This eternal mainland is really a treasure land. Zhou Fight lamented. After flying for a while and dealing with more than 10 reckless historical life forms, he finally arrived at the Myriad Worlds Chaos Pool. It was called a pool, but this was actually an ocean. Endless chaotic sea water gathered into this endless sea. At a glance, it was deep and terrifying, making one's hair stand on end. On the reef shore of this vast sea, a man in a fisherman's outfit was sitting there, fishing with a fishing rod. He was extremely serious and motionless. It was unknown how long he had been here. Chapter 1809, Fishing Man Spring Autumn Dharma Lord 2. Zhou Fight looked from afar and had a faint illusion that this person was clearly in front of him, but he could not sense his existence. Third brother. The Spring Autumn Dharma Lord did not turn around or speak, but Zhou Fight heard the other party's voice. Third brother, don't blame me. I've been waiting here for more than 12,000 years to catch this fish. I can sense that he is going to take the bait in the near future. This is a critical moment. That's why I didn't welcome you personally. What's the big deal? Second brother, don't worry. Zhou Fight also knew that even though the Supreme Lord Reserve Army were competitors, they were also competitors who appreciated each other. He usually called them brothers, so he directly called them second brother. He asked curiously, Second brother, what fish are you fishing for? High-level Supreme Taking Silk Fish. The Spring Autumn Dharma Lord said without turning around. Is there anything magical about this fish? Zhou Fight asked again. He had long known that the other party was a veteran fisherman. He had been addicted to fishing for countless years, but he did not expect that the other party had actually waited for more than 10,000 years for a fish. Zhou Fight did not understand, but he respected him. As for the high-level Supreme Taking Silk Fish that the other party mentioned, Zhou Fight searched through the inheritance in his mind but could not remember the origin of this fish. There's nothing magical about it. Spring Autumn Dharma Lord smiled and said, at most, I'll bring a transcendence skill. A transcendence skill? Zhou Fight was stunned. What high-level Supreme Taking Silk Fish could actually carry such a treasure? You can fish out treasures from fishing? Zhou Fight was surprised. Even though Zhou Fight had heard of similar things in the countless bloodline inheritances in his mind, he had heard of fishing out treasures. At most, he would fish out treasures at the low-tier deity level. As for the transcendence technique that had reached the level of will transcendence, he had never heard of it. Second brother, is this your ability? Zhou Fight could not help but ask. I guess. The Spring Autumn Dharma Lord smiled and nodded. He explained, the mythical tier Lord talent I awakened back then was called the Myriad World Fisherman. I relied on this mythical tier Lord talent to rise after that. At this point, I've already raised the mythical tier 1 Lord talent, the mythical tier Fisherman of the Infinite Worlds, to the transcendent level 1 Lord talent. Even though it's no longer my strongest move, it might be out of habit. When I'm free, I still like to use this transcendent Lord talent to fish for treasures in the Myriad Worlds. Most of the time, I can't catch any treasures that make me feel like it is precious. However, I am happy as your second brother. Towards the end, the Spring Autumn Dharma Lord revealed an infatuated smile. Zhou Fight was surprised. His second brother was really a fool when it came to fishing. Moreover, transcendence, the only Lord talent? Zhou Fight was deep in thought. His main body should also be thinking about when to increase his Lord talent to the supreme level, the only Lord talent. Now, he had some supreme unique Lord talent. It was already useless against the 3 experts who had already reached the supreme will realm. What made Zhou Fight feel the most regretful was that if the main body's Lord talent, Heavenly Fate De Huang, could be upgraded from the supreme unique Lord talent to the supreme unique Lord talent, he would probably be able to achieve the freedom of the will holy artifact and supreme will realm treasures in the future. It would not be like now, where a few will holy artifacts would be deducted. Even some will holy artifacts would not be completely compatible with the supreme will realm experts under him. There was more. His supreme unique Lord talent Lord of Peace could increase the loyalty of the subjects. Even though its effect was very good and the main body relied on it. It was still the Supreme Unique Lord talent, not the Supreme Unique Lord talent. It was useless against Supreme Will Realm experts. Now that the Supreme Will Realm experts under his main body had already reached 3, there would definitely be more and more in the future. The Lord talent of the Lord of Peace was gradually unable to satisfy the main body's needs, so raising it to the supreme level, the only Lord talent, was also an urgent need. He didn't want there to be uncontrollable bombs hidden around him. The way to raise his main body's Supreme Unique Lord talent to the Supreme Unique Lord talent was also very simple. That was that his main body had cultivated the Supreme Sacred Body to the Supreme Will Realm. With the Supreme Sacred Body at the Supreme Will Realm, it could naturally advance the Lord talent on him to the supreme level, the only Lord talent. My main body is already a grade 4 Supreme Sacred Body. Increase your speed during this period of time. Use more time to wash your hands of the Lord talent crystal fragment. You should be able to raise the Supreme Sacred Body to the supreme level in a short period of time. Zhou Fai thought to himself. At this moment, the Spring Autumn Dharma Lord suddenly exclaimed in surprise. Then, he suddenly erupted with an extremely shocking aura and pressure. Under this aura and pressure, Zhou Fai actually felt a terrifying sense of danger as if he was facing a life and death situation. This is... Zhou Fai's pupils contracted. Just as he did not know what had happened, the Spring Autumn Dharma Lord suddenly tugged at the fishing rod and began to wrestle with a certain existence in the myriad worlds chaos pool. When Zhou Fai saw this scene, he vaguely guessed what had happened. Could it be that Supreme High-Level Supreme Taking Silk Fish had taken the bait? Was it such a coincidence? He had only been here for a while, but he had already taken the bait? Spring Autumn Dharma Lord had waited for more than 10,000 years for this divine fish. Spring Autumn Dharma Lord was also puzzled. According to his many years of fishing experience, if he wanted to catch this high-level Supreme Taking Silk Fish, he would have to wait at least 3,000 years before he could slowly lure this fish up. However, he did not expect that not long after his third brother arrived, this fish would be caught. He had a guess. However, there was no time for he to ask further. He immediately began to focus on the matter of fighting with the fish in front of him. Since this fish carried a transcendence technique, it clearly had a transcendence level strength. Even if it was just 1 point. Even if this point was only 1/10,000th of the strength of a true low-level willpower expert, it still forced the Spring Autumn Dharma Lord to wait with all his might. Time passed slowly. After an unknown period of time, the Spring Autumn Dharma Lord finally caught this fish with all his strength. He looked at the mystical fish that emitted a clear light and said excitedly, "I've finally caught this fellow. The bait I spent tens of thousands of years preparing was not in vain." Zhou Fai's lips twitched when he heard that. It took more than 10,000 years to prepare the bait and another 10,000 years to catch this fish. In other words, it had taken the other party more than 20,000 years just for this fish. The time span was too great. Zhou Fai could not accept it anyway. However, compared to other Supreme Will Realm experts, he could obtain a will skill after spending more than 20,000 years. Maya, this was simply a huge opportunity. And it was an extremely easy one. Not to mention spending more than 20,000 years, they could accept spending 200 million, 20 million, or 20 million years to obtain a willpower skill. To a Supreme Will Realm expert, even if it was 20 million years, to them, they would only be in seclusion for 1 or 2 years after all. They could obtain a rare and expensive transcendence skill inheritance at the cost of the most worthless time. No matter which Supreme Will Realm expert it was, they were very willing to accept it. These thoughts flashed through Zhou Fai's mind in an instant. He smiled and congratulated the Spring Autumn Dharma Lord. Congratulations to second brother for obtaining this supreme high-level Supreme Taking Silk Fish. It's just a transcendence skill. The Spring Autumn Dharma Lord shook his head. Zhou Zhou was speechless. So transcendence techniques were just ordinary goods in your eyes. Chapter 1810, Sea of Void. 1. Zhou Fai thought about the endless treasures in the eternal continent and the long river of time and space. Coupled with the other party's ability to fish for treasures, he suddenly felt that the other party might really think so. Zhou Fai, who had always been confident in having many treasures, actually felt a little jealous at this moment. However, when he thought about how he would definitely be able to obtain more precious treasures and foundations than Heavenly Fate De Huang when he advanced to the supreme level, the One Lord talent, or even the transcendent level, he suddenly calmed down. He believed that he could surpass him in this aspect. It just needed a little time. On the other side, Spring Autumn Dharma Lord, who was secretly observing Zhou fight, was also a little surprised. The mentality and confidence of his third brother were definitely not simple, since he who could recover his composure so quickly with a transcendent technique. As expected of the third brother that he and God King Heaven Punishment acknowledged. I still have to thank you this time, third brother. He said as he thought about it. For what? Zhou fight was stunned. You should have great luck, and at least great luck with a transcendent will. Otherwise, how could I, the high-level supreme taking silk fish, take the bait so quickly? Moreover, you took the bait not long after you came to my side. The Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord smiled and said, you helped me save at least 3,000 years. Zhou fight was stunned and came to a realization. So that is how it was. His luck was indeed at least at the transcendent level. He knew this too. The surrounding people would also encounter some lucky things under the influence of their own luck. And reflected on the Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord was that he had caught the fish he wanted in advance. I see. It's good that you can help second brother. After understanding the reason, Zhou fight said frankly. The Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord smiled and nodded. Then, he looked at Zhou fight and suddenly thought of something. His eyes lit up as he suddenly asked, third brother, are you interested in fishing with me? Zhou fight originally wanted to ask the other party what the opportunity for him to advance to the Supreme Will Realm was. This was his only goal in coming to the river of time and space, but when he suddenly heard this question, he couldn't help but be stunned. Then, he shook his head. I'm not interested in fishing. Really? The smile on the Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord's face was meaningful. He pointed at the Sea of Chaos and said seductively, do you know what this myriad worlds chaos pool is? I don't know. Is it a special geographical environment in the Eternal Continent? Zhou fight shook his head. Not necessarily. The Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord shook his head and said slowly, this myriad worlds chaos pool is a special sea that I specially created after imitating the legendary immortal holy artifact the Sea of Void. My forging path can only create will holy artifacts. However, after I imitated the Sea of Void, I only managed to capture a trace of the charm of the Sea of Void by chance. It actually directly promoted it from the level of a will holy artifact to the level of mid-level holy artifact. It has also become my best cornucopia and strongest attack method. Legend has it that the immortal holy artifact Sea of Void contains all the treasures of the ultimate void great cosmos and the illusionary great world. You might even be able to catch an immortal holy artifact as long as you use it. As for my myriad worlds chaos pool, even though it's only an imitation, it has also communicated with several multiverse level worlds. Moreover, it's still slowly expanding its range even now. If you fish with me, you might be able to catch a complete will inheritance. Or to catch the opportunity you wanted to advance to the Supreme Will Realm. The Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord said. Zhou fight could not help but smile bitterly. So that was it. His opportunity was actually to become a fisherman. It seemed like he had no choice but to fish himself. How do I fish? Zhou fight asked directly. When the Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord heard this, he revealed a smug expression. He extended his right hand and saw an emerald green fishing rod appear in his hand. This is the fishing rod I used in the past. Take it and use it. I'll give it to you. As for fishing, there's actually no special technique. A normal fishing method will do. Come, come, come. Just sit next to me and fish. There's no need to worry about snatching my fish. This myriad worlds chaos pool is very big and there are many treasures. The Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord said. Zhou fight nodded and looked at the fishing rod in his hand. He suddenly widened his eyes. Holy artifact name, Azure Sky. Holy artifact grade, high level will holy artifact. Holy artifact will 1 fishing, as a high level will holy artifact, Azure Sky can catch fish at the highest supreme will realm. There's a small chance of catching fish with a will that transcends the level. However, after fishing, it will cause wear and tear on Azure Sky. It will need a long time or the corresponding materials to repair it. Holy artifact will 2 fish perception, able to sense the specific information and approximate location of fish in a certain number of worlds under the sea. Holy artifact will 3 breaking world, Azure Sky can break through the barriers of the multiverse and fish across the multiverse. Holy artifact will 4 Azure fishing rod, the Azure Sky's forging material is of the wood attribute so it has an additional bonus for catching wood fish like life-type fish and special plants. Holy artifact will 6 Azure God line, Azure Sky's fishing line is made of transcendent level materials. When used to attack other lives, it can easily cut through the defense of other lives and cause fatal damage to other lives. It can kill enemies at the Supreme Will Realm at the highest. Chapter 1811, Sea of Void. 2. Prompt: Willpower needs to recognize you as its master. What? Zhou Fight was shocked. Could a fishing rod actually reach high-level will holy artifact? Such a top-grade fishing rod was probably very difficult to find in the entire Supreme Great Cosmos or even the Crimson Great Cosmos. It was probably fished up by the Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord from another Great Cosmos or the Myriad Worlds Chaos Sea. He couldn't help but look at the Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord. How rich was his second brother to be able to casually send over a fishing rod at the high-level will holy artifact? Moreover, this fishing rod was both offensive and defensive. Not only could it be used for fishing, but it could also be used for combat. It would probably be difficult to exchange for such a top-grade fishing rod even with 10 high-level will holy artifacts. The Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord actually casually gave it to him. Just as Zhou Fight was wondering if he should accept this fishing rod, he saw Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord grinning as he took out a new fishing rod from his world rings. This fishing rod was dark gold in color, and the fishing line was especially attractive. It was actually a golden dragon fishing line. The golden dragon was still moving restlessly. It was actually a living golden dragon. What made Zhou Fight secretly shocked was that he actually sensed a transcendent aura from this fishing rod. Zhou Fight couldn't help but have a guess that surprised him. This fishing rod that the Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord had just taken out was probably about to advance to a holy artifact even if it was not a holy artifact. This guy's foundation is indeed extremely shocking. Zhou Fight lamented. Then, he didn't say anything else and sat beside the Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord and casually took out a bait from the Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord's bait to hang on the hook. Then, he threw the hook out and it landed in the chaotic sea. Zhou Fight suddenly thought of something and hurriedly asked just as he swung the hook. "Second brother, will my rod take a long time to catch something?" "Of course not." The Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord shook his head without hesitation. Zhou Fight was just about to heave a sigh of relief when he heard the Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord sigh, "With your luck, you might be able to fish for the opportunity you want the first time. It will also be the treasure you want to advance to the Supreme Will Realm. At most 100 years. The Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord's tone was filled with envy. 100 years? Zhou Fight was so shocked that he cried out. "Yeah, 100 years. Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord nodded and smiled. "Brother, don't tell me you think 100 years is a long time." "Of course." Zhou Zhou chose to agree without hesitation. How long had he been born? His strength was infinitely close to the level of a Supreme Will Realm expert even though he was not even 25 years old. 100 years was too much for them. Little did he know. His words made the Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord rather speechless. He could obtain an opportunity to advance to the Supreme Will Realm in just 100 years. If such a thing happened to any Supreme God, it would be enough to make them ecstatic. They could still afford to wait even if it was 100,000 years, a million years, or even tens of millions of years, what more 100 years? Their lifespan was already endless after all. A mere 100 years was nothing to them. However, the Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord could roughly understand why Zhou Fight would say such a thing thinking about his age. However, he still needed to remind him. 100 years is already an extremely short period of time. That's a treasure that can help you advance to the Supreme Will Realm. Then why don't I break through myself? Zhou Fight was expressionless. In 100 years, I'm 100% confident of advancing to the Supreme Will Realm just by relying on myself. Zhou Fight was extremely confident. He felt that it wouldn't even be 100 years. He was confident of advancing to the Supreme Will Realm in at most a year or at least half a year. He had officially stepped into the Supreme Will Realm after all. What he lacked was the comprehension of the laws at the last step and the first transformation of his willpower. It would definitely not take much time to do this with the reincarnation sacred palace around. The Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord was also speechless by Zhou Fight. He scratched his head and was about to say something when he suddenly thought of something. His eyes lit up as he said to Zhou Fight. "There's really a way to reduce the time you take to catch the target." "What other ways?" Zhou Fight immediately asked. "Go into the sea." The Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord said. "Zhou Fight." The Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord pointed at the Myriad Worlds Chaos Pool and said, "There are countless treasures in the Myriad Worlds Chaos Pool. You can just jump into the sea to fish if you don't have the patience to fish. With your great luck, you might be able to obtain the opportunity you want in an extremely short period of time. However, if you really choose this path, stay away from me when you jump. Don't disturb my school of fish. At the end, the Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord looked at Zhou Fight warily. It would affect the fishing income of the people beside him if he jumped directly into the myriad world's chaotic pool and salvaged the treasures and opportunities inside. If he jumped directly into the myriad world's chaotic pool and salvaged the treasures and opportunities inside, it would affect the fishing income of the people beside him. Then why don't you jump in and fish? Zhou Fight asked. I'm a proper fisherman. What's wrong with jumping into the sea to fish? The Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord asked with a serious expression. If word gets out, it'll be a disgrace to us fishers. Third brother, you're different. You're not a real fisherman. It's understandable that you occasionally use unconventional fishing methods. Zhou Fight was speechless. At this moment, Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord reminded again, but I have to remind you first. Even though there are countless opportunities in this myriad world's chaos pool, there are also fish monsters that have become spirits. Especially in the depths of the myriad world's chaos pool, there will even be the existence of the deep-sea fish king. Some of them will even gather together to form a lord's faction. They can protect themselves and also protect the treasures that they have collected. Don't underestimate them. These fish monsters and even the deep-sea fish king are not weak. The strongest deep-sea fish king even has transcendent strength. You have to be careful. Even I don't dare to provoke that transcendent deep-sea fish emperor. The Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord instructed. Zhou Fight glanced at the Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord. He did not dare to provoke him easily. Did he dare to provoke him no matter what? This guy was clearly only a mid-level Supreme Will Realm expert, but he could challenge a transcendent level enemy. Even if they could not win, they should have the ability to protect themselves. As expected as the second reserve army of the Supreme Lord. That high-level Supreme Will Realm God King Heaven Punishment's combat power would most likely be more scary. He thought for a moment and asked, why are there monsters you can't deal with inside the transcendent holy artifact you personally refined? This myriad world's chaos pool has obtained a trace of the charm of the Sea of Void after all. It can't be helped that there are unexpected variables. The Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord smiled helplessly. Sigh, imitating the Sea of Void has already tainted me with a trace of karma from that immortal holy artifact. The various fish kings, deep-sea fish kings, and even deep-sea fish emperors that appeared in the myriad world's chaotic pool should have been born because of this karma. You admire the Sea of Void a lot. Zhou Fight could not help but ask when he heard the other party mention the Sea of Void several times. Of course. The Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord raised his eyebrows with a fanatical expression. This Sea of Void is a top-notch immortal holy artifact. Even among all the immortal holy artifacts in the ultimate void great cosmos and the illusionary great world, it's ranked in the top 2. Most importantly, it's the supreme fishing ground for all our fishermen. In that will holy artifact, it's normal for you to catch the inheritance of an eternal realm expert. Wouldn't you be tempted if it were you? Zhou Fight was indeed tempted. This Sea of Void is actually so powerful. Then where is it now? He asked. The Sea of Void is mysterious and unfathomable. Until now, many experts don't know its location, nor do they know if it has an owner. I only saw it by chance. I haven't seen it since. What a pity. What a pity. If I can catch a spear in the Sea of Void and immediately advance to a willpower powerhouse, I'm willing to. The Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord instructed. Chapter 1812, Where the Opportunity Is. 1. Zhou Fight. Eat and take everything. At the same time, he couldn't help but yearn for it. He did not know if he would have a chance to get his hands on such a top-notch immortal holy artifact in the future. Perhaps there was a chance. In the future, when he raised his lord talent to the supreme, unique, transcendent, unique, or even immortal level, unless this immortal holy artifact was already taken and its owner was an eternal realm expert, there was a high chance that he would obtain this legendary immortal holy artifact. The Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord continued as he was thinking about these things. Oh yes. The opportunity you want might fall into the hands of a deep-sea fish king with a lord faction. If you go alone, you might not be able to deal with them. It's best to bring your soldiers and generals to deal with them together. Sure. Zhou Fight nodded and said, then I'll go into the sea to take a look myself. Be careful. The Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord did not say anything else. He continued to sit down and fish after reminding him. Seeing this, Zhou Fight turned to look at the chaotic sea. His strength was already comparable to a top supreme willpower expert, but he could still sense an extremely shocking sense of danger from this myriad world's chaotic pool. The Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord did not lie to him. In this chaotic pool of the myriad worlds, there were definitely enemies at the willpower level. This fellow did not personally jump into the sea to obtain treasures. Other than him holding on as a fisherman, the will of the enemy should also be an important reason. He didn't think too much about it. He jumped in after finding a suitable spot. Plop! Zhou Fight fell into the sea and began to dive. As soon as he landed in the sea, Zhou Fight could clearly sense that the sea water of the myriad world's chaos pool was different. What heavy sea water! I feel a little pressure even though I have a grade 4 supreme sacred body. They would probably be crushed instantly if an ordinary supreme god fell into the sea water of the myriad world's chaos pool. Zhou Fight thought. At the same time, he also felt a sense of comfort. It was the feeling that the chaos human bloodline gave him. The sea water of the myriad world's chaos pool was mainly composed of extremely rich and high-quality chaos water mixed with other mysterious substances that he did not understand. Zhou Fight was among them. The power of the water of chaos constantly surged into his body, making his chaos human bloodline vaguely feel like it was about to break through. He was surprised. Ever since his chaos human bloodline reached the upper limit of the Master God tier advanced grade bloodline, he had not broken through for a long time. He was actually about to advance. However, he didn't pay much attention to his chaos human bloodline. His supreme sacred body surpassed the chaos human bloodline by countless times after all. Even if the chaos human bloodline could really break through, it would only be icing on the cake for him. He focused on diving. Ever since he fell into the myriad world's chaos pool, he had a faint feeling. The opportunity he wanted was in the depths of the myriad world's chaos pool. He had to go deeper to obtain the opportunities inside. At this moment, a fish with a dragon head covered in a dark red aura swam over from afar and shot towards Zhou Fight like an arrow. Without looking back, Zhou Fight extended his right hand. The terrifying power of his transformed into the phantom of the myriad method star palm and grabbed the fish in his hand. He looked at the fish from afar as information about it naturally surfaced in his mind. Luofu Blood Dragon Fish. Grade 2 Supreme God Realm. Zhou Fight was amazed. He was currently on the surface of the ocean of the myriad world's chaos pool, but he had actually encountered a fish species with the strength of a grade 2 supreme god. This myriad world's chaos pool was indeed a treasure land that only experts with the strength of the supreme will realm could enter freely. With a thought, he killed the fish and stored it in his number 1 treasure vault. The meat of this Luofu blood dragon fish was delicious. After consuming it, the taste would be endless. Furthermore, it had the effect of tempering one's body. If a pure-blooded dragon at the Master God tier consumed this Luofu blood dragon fish, there was even a chance of breaking through the bloodline bottleneck and becoming a pure-blooded dragon with the bloodline of a supreme god. There was a chance of breaking through the bottleneck of the supreme god and becoming a supreme god dragon god in the future. It could be considered a good treasure. They were qualified to enter his first treasure vault. And the moment he killed the Luofu blood dragon fish, he realized that an item had suddenly appeared in his first treasure vault. It was a sword. Grade 1 Supreme Divine Artifact Luofu Divine Sword. Even though the current Zhou Fight had long looked down on divine artifacts of this level, only the Will Holy Artifact could make him take a second look. However, it was still very surprising for Zhou Fight to obtain a supreme divine artifact so easily. Then, he couldn't help but sigh with emotion again. With a top-grade treasure like the Myriad Worlds Chaos Pool, the treasures in the hands of the Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord probably exceeded his imagination. He continued flying down. And along the way, he also encountered a large number of different types of fish attacking him. Grade 2 Supreme God Tier Baron Earth Bone Fish. Grade 4 Supreme God Tier Thunder Emperor Fish. Grade 3 Supreme God Tier Sword Grass Divine Fish. Grade 4 Supreme God Tier Dragon Vein Shark. As he swam all the way to the bottom of the sea, Zhou Fight could clearly sense that the deeper he swam, the more fish he could encounter. The more types he encountered, the stronger he was. When he reached the middle level of the sea, most of the fish he encountered were at the level of a Grade 4 Supreme God Realm fish. There were very few Grade 3 Supreme God Realm fish. Chapter 1813, Where the Opportunity Is. 2. Furthermore, he had encountered dozens or hundreds of Supreme God level fish the moment he met them. It made him, who had yet to activate King, feel pressured. However, there were benefits. That was, he had killed his way over and obtained many divine fish corpses. These dead fish could be placed in the military merit exchange system for the soldiers under them to exchange for. They could have a taste of these divine fish and strengthen themselves at the same time. These divine fish also dropped many rewards. Supreme divine artifacts, supreme god inheritances, supreme god treasure medicine, supreme god materials, supreme god pet eggs, supreme god servants, supreme god bait, supreme god fishing rod, and occasionally, he could pick up rewards like supreme god small worlds. These were useless to him, so Zhou Zhou put them all into his number 1 treasure vault and threw them all into the military merit exchange system. Finally, he arrived at the bottom of the sea in the myriad worlds chaos pool after swimming for about half an hour. He could vaguely sense that the opportunity he wanted was in this sea level. He didn't hesitate. He immediately followed the feeling in his heart and flew down. He encountered the first fish species in the bottom of the sea that rushed towards him. The other party emitted an aura at the quasi-supreme will realm. Its ferocity was definitely not something the fish he had encountered previously could compare to. However, this strength did not make much difference to Zhou Zhou. He directly activated the king and pulled his strength to the mid-level supreme will realm to save more time. Next, only by using the power of the yellow river stone slab could he increase his strength realm to another level and reach the level of a high-level supreme will realm expert. However, there was no need for that at the moment. With his current strength, if he went all out, even a top supreme will realm expert would die in his hands. Unless he encountered an enemy with a strong will, he might use the yellow river slate to increase his strength, and escape. Before that, his current strength was completely enough. He continued downstream. The deeper he swam into the bottom of the sea, the more fish he encountered, and the stronger he became. By the time he reached the bottom of the sea, the fish he encountered were basically at the quasi-supreme will realm. Moreover, there were tens of thousands or even more than 100,000 of them. Occasionally, they would encounter Lord-type fish kings. It was not strange for hundreds of deep-sea fish kings at the quasi-supreme will realm to have fish kings at the god-spirit realm under their command. The more Zhou Zhou thought about it, the more shocked he became. Was the strength and faction of this fish king at the bottom of the sea so terrifying? He was still very surprised by the level and number of enemies even though it was equally easy for him to resolve it. The Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord is right. I should bring my soldiers over next time to suppress the fish king in the myriad worlds chaotic pool. I can obtain treasures and increase my strength. Before I go to the dusk battlefield to face the illusionist clan's army, this myriad worlds chaos pool, the river of time and space, and even the entire eternal mainland are the best places for me to train my troops. Zhou Zhou thought to himself. As for whether the Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord would agree, he felt that he would probably agree. Even though he had only interacted with the other party for a short period of time, Zhou Zhou felt that the other party should be a very generous partner. It was obvious just from giving he a fishing rod at the level of a high-level will holy artifact and reminding he that he could bring the soldiers into the sea to fish for his opportunities. Since he was allowed to bring troops into the sea, it should not be a big problem for him to bring troops to the eternal continent to train. As he thought about this, he casually dealt with the various fish kings and deep-sea fish kings that surrounded him. With his current strength, it was not a problem for him to go straight into the depths of the sea. It was only the bottom of the sea now, so he didn't have any pressure dealing with it. He followed his fortuitous opportunity and found the location that was suspected to have been left for him by the Supreme Will. It was an ocean shrine. Its area could be described as endless. All kinds of marine buildings were lined up in an orderly manner. They were mainly blue, like a dark blue pearl at the bottom of the sea, attracting Zhou Zhou's attention. The weakest fish kings that emitted powerful auras were at the god spirit level. Their numbers even reached the level of 100 capital units. The number of true god-tier fish kings reached 10 trillion, the number of master god-tier fish kings reached 100 million, the number of supreme god fish kings reached 3,000, and the number of quasi-supreme will realm fish kings reached 100. There were also 10 low-level supreme will realm deep-sea fish kings. Zhou Zhou could not help but raise his eyebrows in shock after Zhou Zhou used his willpower to see the number of troops here. What a terrifying army! With such a military deployment, other than the absence of fish kings below the god spirit level, it had completely exceeded the number of god spirits at all levels in the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom. And he could clearly sense that what he wanted was in the deepest depths of the sea shrine. If he wanted to obtain what he wanted, there was no doubt that he had to slaughter the sea shrine completely. Only then could he obtain the opportunity in the deepest part of the sea shrine without any obstruction. In the beginning, Zhou Zhou had wanted to rely on his own ability to directly take it by force. With his current strength, these stinky fish and rotten shrimps couldn't stop him. But he thought of something and suddenly turned around to swim towards the surface of the sea. Puff! A figure flew out of the sea and landed on the shore. It was Zhou Zhou. The Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord, who had just started a new round of fishing, looked at Zhou Zhou and asked curiously, "You didn't find the opportunity you wanted?" "That's impossible, right? I did find it. However, there's an entire deep-sea fish king faction guarding there. Not only are there 10 low-level Supreme Will Realm deep-sea fish kings, but there are also Divine Spirit Realm fish kings in the capital units and trillions. Therefore, I want to bring my soldiers to suppress the strength of this deep-sea fish king," Zhou Zhou said. The Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord blinked when he heard this, then a smile appeared on his face. Go on, go on. I know what you're thinking. Don't you want to use my Myriad Worlds Chaos Pool as your training ground? That's a good idea. I agree. You can bring as many soldiers as you want. It's my duty to help Third Brother. Third Brother, don't worry. My Myriad Worlds Chaos Pool is connected to the River of Time and Space and the Eternal Continent. It's connected to the immortal holy artifact the Sea of Void. No matter how many soldiers you bring, it's impossible for you to take away all the fish kings and treasures in my Myriad Worlds Chaos Pool. Zhou Zhou felt a little embarrassed after being directly exposed by the Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord. At the same time, he was also a little surprised by the power of the Myriad Worlds Chaos Pool. It could actually make the Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord so at ease to let he lead his soldiers over without worrying that all the treasures in the Myriad Worlds Chaos Pool would be salvaged by him. Even though he had never had this thought, he admired the generosity and boldness of the Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord. At the same time, he had a question in his mind. Second Brother. I feel that directly going into the sea to catch fish is much more efficient than fishing alone. Why don't you jump into the Chaos Sea of the Myriad Worlds to salvage the fish? He asked. The Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord shook his head helplessly. Didn't I just say that? It's my ethics as a fisherman. If other fishing enthusiasts find out that I personally jumped into the fish pool to catch fish just because I wanted to obtain the catch, how can I face them once this matter gets out? How can I survive in the fishing circle in the future? What will other fishing enthusiasts think of me? He looked at Zhou Zhou's still puzzled gaze and retracted his helpless expression. He smiled naturally and said, "Of course, that's not the only reason. I've been building this Myriad Worlds Chaos Pool for a long time. During this period of time, I gradually figured out a magical pattern to use this Myriad Worlds Chaos Pool." Chapter 1814, Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord's Request. 1. That is, as long as you fish sincerely and patiently wait for the fish to take the bait, you can always fish out high-quality things. And if you don't have the patience and fish for a period of time, your defense will be broken if you discover that there are no fish and you will directly go into the sea to fish, then there's a high chance that you won't be able to obtain high-quality high-level fish. Moreover, this unlucky streak will follow you for a long time. I've tried this rule for countless years and I'm already very sure. That's why I'd rather fish for a long time without any gains than go into the sea to fish for that little bit of money. Brother, you are different. You already have a target that will exist, so it doesn't matter if it's probability or not. The probability of falling for the bait is much higher than a willing person like me. However, after this, if you want to harvest high-quality fish, you'd better learn from me and fish obediently. This way, we can catch good fish and not spend some effort to only obtain something worthless. The Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord instructed. So that was it. Zhou Zhou understood. It turned out that there was actually such a secret rule to use the Myriad Worlds Chaos Pool. No wonder the Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord was unwilling to enter the sea. It turned out that he wanted higher-level fish. Then, he didn't say anything else and instantly disappeared. The Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord looked at the spot where the other party disappeared and a smile appeared on his face. When Zhou Zhou returned, he would probably stay in this eternal continent for a long time to train his troops. He could interact more with his third brother and rub off on the other party's luck if he could take advantage of this period of time. Perhaps during the time he spent with his third brother, he could catch a few more precious fish. If he could fish up a willpower transcendent inheritance, he would have profited. The Supreme Will Realm legacies were useless to him at his level. Only will legacies could allow him to grow. I hope that third brother can stay with me for a while longer. When I have time, I can give the other party a transcendent level fishing rod. I'll try my best to get third brother to develop a habit of fishing. This way, he will definitely be able to fish with me more, allowing me to rub off on third brother's luck a few more times. The Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord had determined that a precious transcendent fishing rod was nothing for the sake of Zhou Fight's great luck in fishing for a few precious treasures. Everything was worth it as long as he could advance to a higher level. After a while, a figure holding a floating miniature cosmic warship appeared in front of the Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord. It was Zhou Fight. With a thought, he saw the miniature battleship expand rapidly. In the blink of an eye, it covered the entire sky, turning the location of the Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord and Zhou Zhou into a land of shadows. The corners of Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord's mouth twitched, but he did not say anything. He had just caught a new fish, and it had been at least 20,000 years since the next catch. A mere environmental disturbance shouldn't disturb the target school of fish that he wanted. At this moment, a vast number of experts from the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom that emitted the aura of God spirits flew out of the cosmic warships. In less than a moment, a large number of experts that emitted a terrifying aura appeared in the sky above the eternal mainland. They were the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom army that Zhou Fight had just mobilized from the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom army that had attacked the High Continent to help. Among them were 100 trillion God spirits, 30 billion true God tiers, 1 million master God tiers, 200 supreme gods, and 2 supreme will realm experts. Together, they emitted a terrifying pressure, making the sky where they were seem to collapse. Even the myriad worlds chaos pool where the Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord was fishing stirred up huge waves. The Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord. He couldn't hold it in anymore. Third brother, you. He pointed at Zhou Fight and was about to scold him. At this moment, the fishing rod beside he suddenly tilted up slightly. As an old fisherman, he immediately realized what had happened. After a moment of disbelief, he instantly appeared in front of the fishing rod and began to pull. After a while, after the Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord used all his willpower, he finally caught a black goldfish. He looked at the black goldfish in a daze. Low-level transcendent fish, dark void holy fish. As long as he ate this entire fish, he would obtain the potential of a low-level transcendent. Furthermore, he had a total of 100 will holy artifacts. I am prepared to wait for 20,000 years, but this guy had caught it the moment he tried it. Is that reasonable? He looked at Zhou Fight in a daze, his eyes suddenly bursting with a fire that could melt the supreme star and the Sunday. Zhou Fight was ordering the army to tell them to prepare to dive into the myriad worlds chaos pool later. He turned to look at the Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord and was about to tell him that he was prepared to enter the sea after making all the arrangements. However, he saw the other party's burning gaze the moment he turned around. No matter how strong Zhou Fight's mentality and willpower were, his scalp went numb from the fervor in the other party's eyes. Why did she feel like he had become an existence like a coveted delicacy in the other party's eyes? At this moment, the Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord's words made Zhou Fight's eyes widen. Third brother, are you interested in being my second brother? The Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord said. Zhou Fight. Is there something wrong with the second brother he had just met? Chapter 1815, Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord's Request. 2. Is he joking? He naturally understood what he meant. He wanted him to be the Supreme Lord Reserve Army. Of course I do. Zhou Fight did not hide anything. Then I'll give it to you. The Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord said. Give it to me. Even though Zhou Fight was prepared for the other party's shocking words, he was still shocked. Second brother, what happened? Why are you suddenly confused? He could not help but ask. Your second brother didn't do anything stupid. I really want you to be the second for the Supreme Lord Reserve Army. The Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord said, but I have a small condition. What condition is that? Zhou Fight asked curiously. What could make the other party trade his position of the second reserve army of the Supreme Lord? Accompany me for 100 years. The Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord said. Zhou Fight. Second brother. Zhou Fight's expression was ugly. I'm still a normal, straight man. Impossible, this is definitely impossible. The Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord was stunned for a moment before saying angrily, what are you talking about? It's normal for me to have an orientation. He took a deep breath and said calmly, I'm asking you to fish with me for 100 years. When the time is up, I will automatically give up my position as the second reserve army of the Supreme Lord and let you become my second brother as long as you fish with me for 100 years. You don't have to worry about the Supreme Will. The Supreme Will allowed us successors to take the initiative to make way for those who came later. This path is prepared for Supreme Lord Reserve Army who know their limits. Zhou Fight was stunned for a moment before he fell into deep thought. So that was what he meant. Zhou Fight instantly understood what the other party was thinking. He had taken a fancy to the great providence on him and wanted to rely on the great providence on him to earn 100 years of benefits for him. If he really agreed to fish with the other party for 100 years, perhaps after 100 years, the other party would be able to advance to a willpower expert with the opportunities obtained from fishing. He had only been here for a short while, but the other party had already obtained 2 fishes with transcendent wills after all. It was enough to show how powerful the effect of the great providence on his body was. In the face of such great benefits, it did not seem unacceptable to give up the right to be the second reserve army of the Supreme Lord. At the same time, the Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord was also looking at Zhou Fight's face. When he thought of the 2 shocking fish he had caught today, he could not help but click his tongue. The great luck on his younger brother was definitely not as simple as a will transcending level. It might even be a higher level of luck. If it was really great luck at that level, he said that he could take another step forward and advance to the upper supreme will realm or even break through to the will transcendence realm. He might have a chance to take another step forward and become an eternal immortal realm existence. There was a chance. This was already the Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord's highest valuation of Zhou Fight's luck. No matter how high it was, the Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord felt that it was impossible. There were less than 5 owners of such luck in the entire ultimate void great cosmos. The probability of them landing in their supreme great cosmos was too low. However, even if there was a slight chance, the Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord was willing to fight for it. That was an existence at the eternal immortal realm after all. It was the final point of the cultivation path. Once one reached the peak, they would no longer have to worry about anyone bullying and plotting against them. He felt safe just thinking about it. Once he reached the eternal immortal realm, wouldn't he be able to fish as long as he wanted? Just thinking about it made the Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord a little excited. What was the position of a mere Supreme Lord Reserve Army compared to free fishing that could last forever and not be disturbed? Zhou Fight pondered for a long time before finally shaking his head and refusing with difficulty under his expectant gaze. Why? The Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord asked in disbelief. Could it be that he had also sensed that his luck was extraordinary, so he rejected it? Should he raise the price himself? The treasures and wealth he had accumulated over the years should be able to move the other party, right? However, when he thought about how he had painstakingly accumulated treasures and wealth for so many years and had to give them to others at once, even the generous Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord could not help but hesitate. At this moment, Zhou Fight also gave his reason. I've been in the High Continent for less than a year. I don't want to invest the next 100 years in one thing for the time being. Zhou Fight said. Then, he added inwardly, and it's something like working for someone else. The Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord was stunned when he heard this. Then, he reacted and could not help but laugh. So that was it. The Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord understood that his third brother was still too young. Well, he would probably not agree if it was him. At his age, he still did not understand the weight of 100 years to an immortal. When they lived for more than 1,000 or 10,000 years, they would probably start to feel that the 100 years were not worth mentioning. He smiled and said, since third brother is unwilling, take it that I didn't say anything. It won't be too late to look for me when third brother wants to agree with me in the future. My terms will never change. As long as you agree to fish with me for 100 years, my position will be yours. The Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord was not anxious at all. He had waited for countless years. Was there a need for this bit of time? When Zhou Fight felt that 100 years was not worth mentioning and that he could use 100 years to exchange for the position of the Second Reserve Army Supreme Lord, it would not be too late to look for him. In less than a day, he had obtained 2 transcendent fish in a row. He simply didn't dare imagine how shocking his gains would be if he could make this third brother accompany him for 100 years. Zhou Fight nodded. He naturally knew what the Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord was thinking. This second brother seemed to be certain that he could not break through to the willpower level in a short period of time and that he could not snatch the second reserve army position of the Supreme Lord from the other party, so he said this condition. However, Zhou Fight did not think so. In less than a year, he could go from an ordinary person to the position of the third reserve army of the Supreme Lord. Surpassing the second reserve army of the Supreme Lord and the first reserve army of the Supreme Lord sounded difficult to outsiders, but to Zhou Fight, it was just a slightly difficult challenge journey. With an incomplete eternal immortal realm inheritance like the Supreme Sacred Body in hand, he was confident that after his Supreme Sacred Body advanced to the Supreme Will Realm and his strength advanced to the Supreme Will Realm, he would dare to challenge this Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord who was extremely confident in him. Under such circumstances, it was naturally impossible for him to sell him 100 years to work for him. Then, he didn't say anything else. He led all the god spirits into the myriad world's chaotic pool and swam towards the bottom of the sea. The spring-autumn Dharma Lord looked at Zhou Fight and their figures that had fallen into the chaotic pool of the myriad worlds and smiled. Third brother, I know what you're thinking. But it's not that simple to obtain the position of the second reserve army of the Supreme Lord from me with your strength. You're still too young. You haven't accumulated enough experience. My foundation will exceed your imagination. I have even personally killed a willpower expert. Below the myriad world's chaos pool, Zhou Fight and his 100 trillion god spirits, 30 billion true god tiers, 1 million master god tiers, 200 supreme gods, and 2 supreme will realm experts had already completely dived into the sea. Under Zhou Fight's lead, they flew straight in the direction of their target. Even though they encountered a large number of fishes encircling them along the way, under the combined counterattack of Zhou Fight and the divine spirits, not only did these fishes not cause them any losses, they also dropped a large number of precious fishes that were collected by Zhou Fight using the number 1 treasure vault. They arrived at the previous ocean shrine in no time. Chapter 1816, Supreme Sacred Heart Pill, 1. When the god spirits under Zhou Fight saw the powerful forces of the ocean shrine, not only were they not afraid, they were even eager to give it a try. Wasn't it the same for most of the wars they had experienced before? Therefore, they were not afraid at all. In their eyes, these seemingly powerful and numerous fish kings were clearly stepping stones for them to improve. At the same time, many fish kings and deep-sea fish kings in the sea shrine had already noticed Zhou Fight and the Blazing Sun army behind him. Seeing this, they immediately organized the Fish King army and confronted the army of the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom above the sea shrine. A deep-sea fish king that emitted the pressure of a low-level supreme will realm flew out of the Fish King army and stood in the sky above them. He looked coldly at Zhou Fight and them and said coldly, "Who are you? How dare you offend my golden scale divine kingdom?" Zhou Fight looked at the other party and said calmly, "Did your divine kingdom accidentally obtain a treasure that can help life forms advance to the supreme will realm recently?" The God Lord Golden Scale's expression changed drastically as he stared at Zhou Fight. "How do you know?" he said with killing intent. The other 9 low-level Supreme Will Realm Deep-Sea Fish Emperors could not help but look at God Lord Golden Scale with surprise and passion in their eyes after hearing Zhou Fight's words. God Lord Golden Scale's expression turned even uglier. He had also obtained that treasure by chance. When he discovered that not only could it help a life form advance to the Supreme Will Realm, but it could even help a low-level Supreme Will Realm expert advance to the mid-level Supreme Will Realm, he quietly put it away. This treasure was too precious. It concerned the outcome of his future advancement. He was prepared to polish his willpower to the point where he could use that treasure to break through. Before the level of his willpower was perfected, he was not prepared to reveal any information about this treasure. This was because other than him, the low-level Supreme Will Realm Deep-Sea Fish Emperor, there were 9 other low-level Supreme Will Realm Deep-Sea Fish Emperors in his Golden Scale Divine Kingdom. Once they knew that he had a treasure that could help them break through to a higher level, God Lord Golden Scale was 100% sure that they would immediately betray him and take the treasure away. He originally wanted to break through secretly. Now, once Zhou Fight said it, nothing could be hidden anymore. Even if Zhou Fight only said that it was a treasure that could help a life form advance to the low-level Supreme Will Realm, it was useless. This was because they would definitely want to see this treasure, and his strength could not absolutely suppress them. He could only show it to them. And once they saw that treasure, a battle would definitely erupt between them. Hence, at this moment, the God Lord Golden Scale hated Zhou Fight deeply. Zhou Fight did not know why the other party was suddenly so angry. Even though a treasure that could help a life form advance to the low-level Supreme Will Realm was an extremely precious treasure to a Supreme God, it should be ordinary to a Supreme Will Realm expert, right? What's the hurry? However, he did not care. It doesn't matter how this emperor knows. He shook his head with a calm expression. This emperor is only here to inform you that that treasure is mine. Please hand it to this emperor. This emperor will give you some gifts to thank you for your reservations. For example, 100 supreme divine artifacts or a low-level will holy artifact. How about that? Zhou Fight felt that the price he offered was already very affordable. That was only an opportunity to advance to the Supreme Will Realm after all. It was not like one could advance 100% after using it. The price of 100 supreme divine artifacts or a low-level will holy artifact far exceeded the value of this opportunity. If you say it's yours, it's yours. The God Lord Golden Scale was so angry that he laughed. Then why should I say that the God Spirit army behind you is mine? Do you want to give them to me? Zhou Marshal sighed and shook his head. Looks like we're going to have a fight. The God Lord Golden Scale was about to say something when Zhou Fight waved his hand and a cold voice sounded. Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom's army, listen up. Kill all the enemies here. Leave no one alive. Yes. The billions of God spirits of the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom roared angrily and rushed towards the army of the Golden Scale Divine Kingdom. Its aura was shocking, its murderous aura was terrifying, and it could be said to be a fearless army of super God spirits. Facing such an imposing Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom army, not to mention the ordinary God spirits of the Golden Scale Divine Kingdom, even God Lord Golden Scale and the other 10 low-level Supreme Will Realm experts were stunned for a second. They never expected that it involved an all-out war between the entire Divine Kingdom. The other party actually did not have any intention of discussing it. They only said a few simple words and the army rushed forward. Didn't you guys treat something as important as starting a war so carelessly? Such a war at the level of a Master God tier kingdom would not be easily started by them even after thousands or tens of thousands of years. Everyone was carefully maintaining peace with each other. Unless it was absolutely necessary, they would not easily start a war. It was to prevent other deep-sea mermaid emperors from taking advantage of them after both sides were injured. Why does it seem like you guys treat this kind of war as a common occurrence? Chapter 1817, Supreme Sacred Heart Pill, 2. Is that reasonable? However, they had never thought about what kind of tempering this Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom army had gone through to reach their current state. The strength of these deep-sea mermaid emperors might not even start a Divine Kingdom level war for thousands of years. However, to the army of the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom, they experienced wars of this level or even higher at least once a day. In such a tempering environment, didn't they treat war as a common occurrence? Speaking of which, at this moment, after the God Lord Golden Scale reacted, he immediately ordered the Golden Scale Divine Kingdom's God Spirit army to counterattack the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom's God Spirit army that was fighting Zhou Fight. In the beginning, God Lord Golden Scale and they were still very confident. Be it in terms of ordinary God spirits or Supreme Will Realm experts, they far exceeded the Divine Army of the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom after all. However, as time passed, they felt that something was amiss. Why was the number of troops on their side decreasing? Why was the other party's army increasing in number? No, why did our own Divine Kingdom army turn around and attack our own people? They were stunned. God Lord Golden Scale couldn't take it anymore, so he decided to bring the other 9 Supreme Will Realm experts to attack together. Then, there was no after. The battlefield returned to calm. Zhou Fight shook his head as he walked on a battlefield that was not filled with the corpses of fish kings. You overestimate yourself. He flew alone into the depths of the sea shrine and quickly found the purpose of his trip in a hidden temple. It was an existence covered in dense golden Dao patterns and emitting a terrifying will. Under the influence of the power of will, the moment all living beings saw this pill, they could see the existence they yearned for the most. Zhou Fight was not surprised. The first moment he saw the pill, he saw scenes. The world was at peace. The people lived and worked in peace. All directions were fertile land. The foreign enemies did not dare to invade. Zhou Zhou sat quietly in the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom and smiled as he watched the clouds rise and fall in the ultimate void Great Cosmos. The ultimate void Great Cosmos and the illusionary Great Cosmos both bowed down to him. He felt that there was nothing else in the world that troubled him. One day, a mysterious space suddenly opened. A group of experts who claimed to be immortal flew out and laughed at him. My fellow deist. It's time to return to your positions. Zhou Fight did not say anything. He just smiled and watched everything. After a long while, he said. That's great. What a pity. It is all an illusion. Everything he saw dissipated, leaving only the golden pill floating quietly in front of him as he finished speaking. He smiled and waved his hand. The pill flew over and landed in his hand. A text notification appeared as he looked at it. Treasure name, Supreme Sacred Heart Pill. Treasure grade, High Level Supreme Will Realm. Treasure effect, when a quasi-Supreme Will Realm expert consumes him, there is an 80% chance of condensing a will skill that is most suitable for them and becoming a Supreme Will Realm expert. After a Supreme Will Realm expert consumes it, the probability of advancing to a higher level can be slightly increased. Treasure description, a top-notch divine pill personally refined by the Supreme Will. It's a treasure that countless Supreme Gods and even Supreme Will Realm experts dream of. It's indeed a treasure for my main body to advance to the Supreme Will Realm. Zhou Fei nodded in satisfaction. There was an 80% chance of condensing the most suitable probability for him to become a Supreme Will Realm expert. This probability was ridiculously high. As expected of an opportunity personally left for him by the Supreme Will. It was top-notch. Moreover, there was a small chance of them breaking through to a higher level after a Supreme Will Realm expert consumed it. It was no wonder that the already dead God Lord Golden Scale cared so much about his opportunity. Only then did Zhou Fei understand why the other party had such a reaction just now. Then, he stopped thinking about it. Zhou Fei led the God Spirit army under him and swam deeper after the generals cleaned up the battlefield. They were at the bottom of the sea. If they swam further down, they would enter the bottom of the sea. In this range, even if they encountered a Supreme Will Realm Deep Sea Fish Emperor, it was considered normal. There was also a very small chance of encountering an enemy with a transcendent will. As for the chaotic abyss below the bottom of the sea, it was also the bottom of the myriad worlds chaos pool. It was even ruled by several deep-sea supreme beings whose wills exceeded several times. Zhou Fei naturally did not want to go down. He planned to lead his generals to train at the bottom of the sea. This realm would be the best place for his generals to train as long as they avoided the low-level supreme of the deep sea. The war here might be extremely difficult, but Zhou Fei was confident that he could protect them. They arrived at the bottom of the ocean in no time. Zhou Fei felt something and revealed a surprised expression as soon as he entered this range. What abundant promotion energy! The promotion energy here is even more terrifying than the promotion energy in our Blazing Sun Divine Capital. Zhou Fei was very emotional. He was probably born with the potential of a supreme god growing up in an environment of promotion energy of this level. As expected of a superior transcendent holy artifact myriad worlds chaos pool. The other generals and god spirits also felt the richness of the promotion energy here. Shock appeared on their faces. They had never seen a place with such rich promotion energy. At this moment, Zhou Fei suddenly felt something and turned to look into the distance. 10 seconds later, a shadow vaguely appeared in that direction. The generals also sensed something and hurriedly looked over. Gradually, the shadow gradually approached and finally became very clear. It was a deep-sea fish king army. Among them were a total of 12 deep-sea fish emperors that emitted the aura of the Supreme Will Realm. Moreover, 3 of them emitted the aura of mid-level Supreme Will Realm. As for the other Supreme Gods, Master God Tiers, True God Tiers, and even ordinary God Spirits, the number of deep-sea fish kings was about 1/10 more than the Golden Scale Divine Kingdom's army. Zhou Fei looked satisfied when he saw the school of fish rushing towards him aggressively. As expected of the lowest level of the ocean. He did not come for nothing. It was really an excellent place to train soldiers. Outside, even in the high continent, it was very difficult to find such a group of powerful enemies. They might only encounter a few in the deepest part of Tianjun's corpse, but it was only a few. Currently, in all the wars established by the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom, this myriad worlds chaos pool is definitely the highest quality battlefield for the enemy. Zhou Fei thought to himself as he looked at the school of fish that had rushed in front of him. Then, he ordered. Destroy them. Yes. The army of the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom obeyed. After roaring angrily, they instantly rushed towards the group of fish kings, deep-sea fish kings, and deep-sea fish emperors. The Fire Heart Will and the Dao Breaking Will also rushed at the 12 Supreme Will Realm experts. Then, they fell into a disadvantage. Even though they wore a full set of Will Holy artifacts, the other party had 6 times the number of them after all. Among them, were 2 deep-sea fish emperors at mid-level Supreme Will Realm. It was normal for them to be at a disadvantage. Moreover, every Supreme Will Realm deep-sea fish emperor on the other party had at least 2 Will Holy artifacts that were compatible with them. The Fire Heart Will and the Dao Breaking Will really did not have any advantage over them. Fortunately, Zhou Fei naturally would not stand by and do nothing. He activated the king and raised his strength to the mid-level Supreme Will Realm. He held the Xian Yuan Divine Sword and charged forward. With combat strength comparable to the high-level Supreme Will Realm, it was naturally easy for him to face the 12 deep-sea fish emperors at the Supreme Will Realm. In less than a moment, before the Fire Heart Will and the Dao Breaking Will could react, the 12 Supreme Will Realm deep-sea fish emperors were killed by him. His Majesty has become stronger again. The Fire Heart Will and the Dao Breaking Will were secretly shocked. Chapter 1818, Supreme Tier, Supreme Lord Talent, Supreme Luck. 1. Even though they had not followed Zhou Fight's clones for long, in just a few days, they had already seen Zhou Fight's strength increase several times. How could they not be shocked? After Zhou Fight dealt with the 12 Supreme Will Realm Deep Sea Fish Emperors, he stopped cleaning up the remaining Deep Sea Fish Kings. He would leave this promotion energy to his subordinates. At his current realm, he no longer needed promotion energy. He needed nomological comprehension. More than an hour later, the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom's God Spirit Army completely destroyed this group of Deep Sea Fish Kings. Zhou Fight was very satisfied with this. This was because he had discovered that after the war ended, many God Spirit soldiers directly broke through to the True God Tier, Master God Tier, and even Supreme God level. 30,000% promotion energy was no joke. He had a premonition. Tomorrow morning, there would probably be more than 100 generals who had advanced to the Supreme God realm. There might even be more. Continue. After Zhou Fight felt the beauty of this training ground, he continued to fight at the bottom of the sea. After fighting for 4 to 5 hours, he led the soldiers out of the myriad world's chaotic pool and prepared to rest for a while before continuing the battle. However, just as he came out, he saw the figure beside the Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord. He was first stunned before he hurriedly flew over and stood beside the Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord. "Greetings, Lord Supreme Will." The Supreme Will smiled and nodded. He looked at Zhou Fight with increasing satisfaction. "Common people's regal, do you know why I'm here?" Zhou Fight thought for a moment and said, "Sir, you should be here for my 2 newly advanced Supreme Will Realm cultivators, right?" "That's right." The Supreme Will nodded slightly and smiled. "Call them over." This is the first time in 100,000 years that a Supreme Will Realm expert has been born in our Supreme Great Cosmos. Moreover, 2 have been born at once. I want to see them. Yes, Lord Supreme Will. Zhou Fight nodded and called the Fire Heart Will and the Dao Breaking Will over. After the 2 low-level Supreme Will Realm cultivators arrived, they stood in front of the Supreme Will cautiously and said respectfully and nervously, "Greetings, Lord Supreme Will. Welcome to the Supreme Great Cosmos and become a member." The Supreme Will smiled. Since he knew about these 2 newly advanced Supreme Will Realm experts, they naturally knew that they were outsiders from Tianjun's corpse. "We are also very honored to be led by His Majesty to join the Supreme Great Cosmos and become a member." The Fireheart Will hurriedly said. Yes. Actually, we were only at the Quasi-Supreme Will Realm previously. We only advanced to the low-level Supreme Will Realm with the help of His Majesty and the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom. We have a very strong sense of belonging here." The Dao Breaking Will hurriedly said. The Supreme Will chuckled softly in his heart. He looked at Zhou Fight with a gentler gaze. He was also more satisfied with his choice of the Common People's Regal as his last Supreme Lord Reserve Army. He had only joined for a short period of time, but he had already brought him 2 Supreme Will Realm experts, greatly increasing the upper limit of the number of peak experts in the Supreme Great Cosmos. How could he not be satisfied? The Supreme Will smiled and said, "Follow your Majesty to the Supreme Domain tonight. All the Supreme Will Realm experts of our Supreme Great Cosmos will hold a welcome ceremony for you. At the same time, they will inform the myriad worlds of your participation. You Supreme Will Realm experts should also get to know each other. If you encounter something in the future, you can help each other." Fireheart Will and Dao Breaking Will subconsciously glanced at Zhou Fight when they heard this. Zhou Fight nodded slightly. Fireheart Will and Dao Breaking Will smiled and said, "Then it's impolite for us to decline. I look forward to getting to know the experts in the Supreme Great Cosmos." The Supreme Will nodded slightly and thought to himself. It seems like Zhou Zhou has nurtured his 2 Supreme Will Realm cultivators very loyally. That makes sense also. My 3rd Reserve Army has the strength of a top Supreme Will Realm expert now. Strength is the strongest foundation that can convince experts. Lord Supreme Will. Zhou Fight asked, "Do I have to participate in the banquet too?" "Of course." The Supreme Will smiled and nodded, "Even though you haven't advanced to the Supreme Will Realm, your strength has already reached. Besides, these 2 Supreme Will Realm experts grew up under your nurturing. Who says you can't come?" Zhou Fight nodded in anticipation. It was a grand ceremony for a Supreme Will Realm expert. This was the peak of the Supreme Great Cosmos. He naturally wanted to participate and get to know the Supreme Will Realm experts in the Supreme Great Cosmos. They might be able to help each other in the future. That's not right. I have it now. The transactions of the mysterious merchant chamber of commerce in the myriad worlds and even the ultimate void great cosmos required the protection of Supreme Will Realm experts. If they could invite a few Supreme Will Realm experts to help during this ceremony, they would not have to worry about the safety of the mysterious merchant chamber of commerce. You nurtured 2 Supreme Will Realm experts and contributed greatly to our Supreme Great Cosmos. Our Supreme Great Cosmos will have more confidence in facing the invasion of the Crimson Great Cosmos and the illusionary Great World in the future. Reasonably. I'm going to give you a reward. After the Supreme Will finished speaking, he fell into deep thought. What reward should he give him? They had people, holy artifacts, territories, wealth. It seemed like they really did not lack anything. Chapter 1819, Supreme Tier Supreme Lord Talent Supreme Luck. 2. Suddenly, he thought of something and looked up at Zhou Fight. He reached out and gently pointed at Zhou Fight's glabella. At the same time, Zhou Zhou, who was in the reincarnation sacred palace, also felt something warm touch his glabella. This is. I'll give you a reward. You're gonna love it. With that, Zhou Zhou felt a warm force surge into his mind from between his brows before spreading to various parts of his divine body. A moment later, a line of text suddenly appeared in front of Zhou Zhou. Your Supreme Unique Lord Talent Heavenly Fate De Huang has advanced to Supreme Unique Lord Talent Supreme Luck. Your specific Lord Talent effect is as follows. Lord Talent, Supreme Luck, Supreme Level, Unique. Supreme Luck, you have the strongest luck power in the Great Cosmos other than the founder of the Great Cosmos. You, who is protected by the Supreme Luck, might become the Supreme Lord in the future. Supreme Luck 100% drop rate, you can see the drop rate of the enemy's loot. When looting the corpse, there's a 100% chance of obtaining all the loots. Supreme Luck Super Explosion, you have a super explosion every day. When you loot the corpse, you can obtain 50 times the number of spoils of war from the enemy. Supreme Luck Perfect Loots, when you loot the corpse, the quality of the loot you obtained +1. There is a 0.01% chance of the quality of the loot +2. Supreme Luck Supreme Protection, you are protected by the origin luck of the Great Cosmos. You can sense the location of the treasures and opportunities you need and directly know the method to obtain them. When you encounter danger, the Supreme Lord will guide you to a way to resolve it. Supreme Providence Supreme Lord, you are the future Supreme Lord. Any living being that is your enemy will be abandoned by Providence and will definitely encounter bad luck. You can also take the initiative to extract the enemy's good luck and fuse it into yourself, leaving only bad luck on the enemy. When you encounter a calamity of fate, there's a 20% chance that the calamity in your fate will be directly resolved by Supreme Luck. You might even turn misfortune into fortune and obtain unexpected benefits. Note, this Lord Talent can only affect existences and things below the Supreme Will Realm. When Zhou Zhou saw these words, his eyes lit up and his heart pounded. His Heavenly Fate De Huang Lord Talent had actually been upgraded from the Supreme Unique Lord Talent to the Supreme Unique Lord Talent. This was his first Supreme Lord Talent. This was the reward he wanted the most. The Supreme Will was too considerate. Are you satisfied with this reward? The Supreme Will asked with a smile. Thank you, Lord Supreme Will. I like this reward too much. Zhou Zhou smiled at the Supreme Will on the eternal mainland from afar. As long as you are satisfied. If you can bring 5 new Supreme Will Realm experts to our Supreme Great Cosmos next time, I can increase your other Lord Talents again. Until your Supreme Sacred Body advances to the Supreme Will Realm, I won't give you this reward. The Supreme Will said. When the Supreme Sacred Body advanced to the Supreme Will Realm, Zhou Zhou could completely rely on himself to increase his Lord Talent to the Supreme level. He naturally did not need to increase the other party's Lord Talent. Thank you, Lord Supreme Will. I will definitely bring 5 new Supreme Will Realm experts to you as soon as possible. Zhou Zhou guaranteed. He had the support of many top-notch Lord Talents. Now that he had the help of the Supreme Luck, the only Lord Talent, nurturing 5 Supreme Lord Talents was not a big problem. The Supreme Will and the Spring Autumn Dharma Lord smiled and shook their heads. He was still a junior after all. Their territory was quite lucky. 2 newly advanced Supreme Will Realm experts were born, but they had misunderstood the difficulty of nurturing Supreme Will Realm experts. If it was so easy for a Supreme Will Realm expert to be born, there would not be only more than 50 Supreme Will Realm experts in the Supreme Great Cosmos since its birth. The Spring Autumn Dharma Lord and God King Heaven Punishment had been the reserve army of the Supreme Lords for so many years. Was they strong enough? It was naturally very deep. With the Supreme Will as their backing, even some top Supreme Will realm experts who had lived for countless years might not have as many foundations as the two juniors. However, there were less than 2 Supreme Will realm experts that they had nurtured for the Supreme Great Cosmos. Therefore, after hearing Zhou Zhou's words, they felt that Zhou Zhou was taking it for granted. However, they did not strike a blow to Zhou Zhou. It was naturally a good thing to have such thoughts. When they hit a wall in the future and knew the difficulty of nurturing a Supreme Will realm expert, they would naturally be down to earth and take it slow. There was no need for them to deliberately remind the other party at this moment. The Supreme Will said again. Common People's Regal, do you know that other than searching for an opportunity to advance to the Supreme Will realm, I sent you to the Eternal Continent for another matter? The Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord's expression changed. Zhou Fight glanced at Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord and shook his head. I don't know. He actually had a guess, but in front of the Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord, it was not good for him to mention his guess. The reason why I asked you to come to the Eternal Mainland is not only to let you obtain your Supreme Will realm opportunity, but also. The Supreme Will looked at Zhou Fight and the Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord and a faint smile appeared on its lips. I want you and the Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord to compete for the position of the Second Reserve Army of the Supreme Lord. As expected. Zhou Zhou thought to himself. He knew what the Supreme Will meant. He had previously asked he to go to the Ultimate Void battlefield to take down the position of the Third Reserve Force of the Supreme Lord from Lord of 10,000 Evils. Now that he had changed locations, it was too normal for he to continue climbing. But wasn't this too rushed? He had only been the Supreme Lord's Third Reserve for a few days, and he was already competing with a formidable opponent like the Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord? Thinking about the foundation that the other party had accumulated over countless years of fishing, Zhou Fight did not have any motivation to compete with him. Let me develop for a while more. With the Supreme Providence, as long as he was allowed to develop for a period of time, even if he was only allowed to develop for a year and nurtured dozens or hundreds of Supreme Will realm experts under him, he would dare to compete with him. He smiled bitterly on the surface because he had reservations and said, Lord Supreme Will, I haven't advanced to the Supreme Will realm. Isn't it not good to compete with second brother so early? Moreover, second brother treats me so well. I don't want to compete with him so quickly. When the Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord heard Zhou Fight's words, he smiled slightly. His deep gaze seemed to see through Zhou Fight's thoughts. The Supreme Will mercilessly exposed Zhou Fight and said with a smile, even though you haven't advanced to the Supreme Will realm, you already have the combat strength of a high-level Supreme Will realm expert. When you advance to the low-level Supreme Will realm, you won't lose too badly even if you face the Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord head-on. The generals and soldiers under you are all quite strong. From the looks of it, the difference between you and the Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord is not too great. I know you're worried. However, pressure is also motivation. I can use this matter to spur you on and make you grow faster. Common People's Regal, your potential is extremely high, but without external pressure, no matter how high your potential is, it's very difficult to completely fulfill it in a short period of time. Now that the Crimson Great Cosmos is an enemy in the Supreme Great Cosmos and the Illusionary Great Cosmos is eyeing us covetously outside, you don't have much time. Even though your growth speed is unprecedented in the Supreme Great Cosmos, you can even be said to be unparalleled. However, it is a special time now. You can't develop slowly. Zhou Zhou frowned slightly. What did the Supreme Will mean? Could the current situation of the Supreme Great Cosmos be so dire? The Supreme Will actually said that he needed to grow faster even with his inhumane growth speed? He had only been in the High Continent for less than a year. He had already advanced from an ordinary person to a top-notch expert with peak Supreme Will realm combat strength. Was this considered slow? Chapter 1820, Test. The Secret of the Eternal Continent. 1. When the Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord heard this, not only did he not care that the Supreme Will treated him as a whetstone for Zhou Fight, he even smiled and said, what the Supreme Will said makes sense. Third brother. Your upbringing is too comfortable for now. Let second brother increase your strength. I look forward to the day you grow to be on the same level as me or even surpass me. At this moment, the Supreme Will looked at the Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord with a helpless expression. And I asked the Common People's Regal to chase after you because I wanted to supervise you. If there's a sense of danger for the Common People's Regal, it's because he is too comfortable. I give you a sense of danger because you're too lazy. All you do every day is fish. Do you like collecting treasures that much? Treasures are ultimately external objects. Keeping them can't help you increase your will realm. Your potential is not inferior to God King Heaven punishment. If you used a tenth of your fishing time to cultivate, you would already be at the high-level Supreme Will realm. Why are you still at the mid-level Supreme Will realm? Don't wait for the common people's regal to surpass you before you know how to be anxious. The Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord couldn't help but feel resentful when he heard that. He muttered, I just like fishing. There's nothing I can do. Moreover, what's the use of me reaching the high-level Supreme Will realm? I'm not as abnormal as God King Heaven punishment. I've already found my way to transcend. I haven't even found my own path yet. Even if I sharpen my will to the high-level Supreme Will realm now, won't I still have to stay at that realm? You're still talking back. The Supreme Will frowned, already a little angry. The Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord hurriedly shut up, not daring to say anything else. The Supreme Will shook his head helplessly. He was really helpless against the Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord. However, come to think of it, even though the Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord did not have much motivation to increase his willpower realm, his true combat strength was indeed unquestionable. In the past, when the Supreme Will saw him, he only knew how to fish every day and did not actively increase his realm. Therefore, he was specially sent to complete a mission that was almost impossible in the eyes of the Supreme Will. To kill a low-level willpower expert who had once provoked the Supreme Will. The low-level willpower expert came from other great cosmoses in the ultimate void great cosmos. After provoking the Supreme Will once, he realized that he could not defeat it and fled. The Supreme Will couldn't be bothered to personally deal with such a lousy opponent, so he handed he over to the Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord to deal with. At that time, the Supreme Will had already made up its mind. This mission was only a warning to the Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord to not only play every day and forget that strength was the most important thing. If the Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord was dealing with that low-level willpower expert, once danger appeared, the Supreme Will that was constantly paying attention to the Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord would also save him in time. However, he did not expect that after the Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord found the low-level willpower expert, he would personally defeat him. Even though he had tried his best and consumed a lot of the treasures he had accumulated over the years. However, he had to admit that the Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord had used his fishing method to increase his combat strength to the level of a low-level willpower expert. At that time, the Supreme Will determined that the Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord had potential that was not inferior to the God King Heaven punishment. This was because God King Heaven punishment had also personally killed a low-level willpower expert. However, unlike the Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord, God King Heaven punishment did not use any external methods. Instead, he relied on his strength at the high-level Supreme Will realm to kill that low-level Will realm expert. In the eyes of the Supreme Will, even though the process and methods of defeating the strong were different, their potential was not inferior to each other. The Supreme Will thought of the Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord's growth path and understood the hobby and ability of fishing. It played a huge role in the growth of the Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord. No, it could even be said to be decisive. Fortune and misfortune depend on each other, and misfortune and fortune depend on each other. Since he had accepted the benefits of fishing, he could only endure the bad things brought about by fishing. The Supreme Will did not say anything else. It simply reminded the Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord before saying to Zhou fight. The Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord will tell you how to compete for the second reserve army of the Supreme Lord. I won't repeat it. Defeat the Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord as soon as possible and advance to your Supreme Lord rank. I will watch you in the Supreme Domain. The Supreme Lord looked at the Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord again and glared. If you're taken away by the new junior, I'll teach you a lesson. At that time, I'll make sure you're not allowed to fish for at least 10,000 years. Zhou fight. The Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord trembled. To make him not fish for 10,000 years? Then, might as well ask him to die. Then, the Supreme Will did not say anything else and disappeared on the spot. Zhou fight and the Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord looked at each other and could not help but smile bitterly. Third brother. Looks like you and I are going to fight. The Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord instructed. What exactly is the competitive method that the Supreme Will mentioned? Zhou fight was not afraid. Instead, he asked curiously. The Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord nodded slightly when he saw this. Even though he had just advanced, it had to be said that his courage was indeed shocking. Chapter 1821, Test. The Secret of the Eternal Continent. 2. He was actually not afraid of facing the veteran Supreme Lord Reserve Army. He did not even look worried and asked how to compete. How confident. However, the Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord was not surprised. Which one of those who could there reach the position was not a genius? Which one lacked confidence? Not only did Zhou Fei's performance not make the Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord wary of him, but it also made him think highly of him. As expected of an existence that could be on par with them. If he were to show fear just by facing him, the Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord would look down on him. It's the simplest way to compete. The Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord smiled. Of course it's to fish with me for 100 years. At that time, I'll directly give you the position of the Second Reserve Army of the Supreme Lord. Zhou Fei had expected this and shook his head. Second brother, stop joking. Fine. The Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord had a regretful expression before saying seriously, then I'll talk about the normal competitive method. Before that, I have a question for you. Do you know why the eternal mainland and the river of space and time are here? Zhou Zhou was stunned. Did this mean that the eternal continent and the river of time and space under their feet were originally not in this position? He frowned slightly and began to deduce in his heart. A moment later, he looked a little surprised. He said, I just used luck as the foundation to activate the illusionary heavenly fate technique and deduced an unbelievable conclusion. This eternal mainland and the river of space and time seem to have been forcefully torn down by something from the original eternal mainland and the river of space and time. Then, it fused with our supreme great cosmos and the crimson great cosmos. Third brother's divination technique is indeed brilliant. He can actually predict this. The Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord was very surprised. The secrets of the eternal mainland and the long river of time and space were secrets of the transcendent level of willpower. Under normal circumstances, only experts with transcendent wills could divine the secrets contained in the eternal mainland. He did not expect his third brother to be able to predict it by himself. He was only a grade 1 supreme god. The Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord had determined that. He realized that he had been surprised more than once today because of his third brother. As expected, meeting face to face was the best. As for the reason why Zhou Fei could divine it, Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord guessed that it might be because of the great providence on him. Only luck with at least a transcendent will could ignore the difference in strength and know such an extremely confidential matter. Third brother, you're right. Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord nodded. This eternal mainland and the river of space and time were indeed forcefully torn down by an existence from the original eternal mainland and the river of space and time and fused into the origin of our supreme great cosmos and the crimson great cosmos. As for who it is? I'm sure you've guessed it. It's our supreme will. When Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord said this, his eyes lit up. Back then, the supreme will forcefully tore off the eternal mainland and the river of space and time that belonged to our great cosmos alone. This way, the existences from the outside world would not be able to find information about our supreme great cosmos and the crimson great cosmos in the original eternal mainland and the river of space and time. If we can't find any information, the outside universe forces won't dare to rashly invade our universe. If they invade and discover that the forces of our universe are many times stronger than the other parties, wouldn't they be courting death if they take the initiative to invade after all? This is also the reason why our supreme great cosmos and the neighboring crimson great cosmos have never been invaded by the forces of the outer universe. I see. Zhou Fei was enlightened. No wonder there was no information about the invasion of the outer universe in the inheritance in his mind. It turned out that they did not dare to invade. The Supreme Will's actions are really meritorious. Zhou Fei also praised. Of course. The Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord agreed deeply. The ultimate void great cosmos is far from as peaceful as you and I imagined. As long as the great cosmos understands each other's general information, it's extremely normal for them to invade each other. The level of chaos in the ultimate void great cosmos is even more chaotic and cruel than the Lord of all Races contest that third brother has experienced. If not for the Supreme Will bringing over our eternal continent and the river of space and time to become our private property, I'm afraid our supreme great cosmos would have been invaded countless times over the years. How could there be such peace now? As for organizing the Lord of all Races contest, that's even more nonsense. Zhou Fei nodded. He felt a little emotional. In that case, it was all thanks to the Supreme Will that his main body could participate in the Lord of all Races and even rise from it. Otherwise, he would still be a mortal on Earth. In the end, he would bid farewell to this world as an ordinary person 100 years later. To be able to tear off a piece of the eternal mainland and the river of space and time, I wonder how powerful the Supreme Will is. Zhou Fei was both emotional and curious. The Supreme Will's strength is far beyond our imagination. The Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord smiled and said, even though he has only attacked a few times in the ultimate void great cosmos, these few attacks have allowed he to establish his status as a top expert in the ultimate void great cosmos. Among all the willpower transcendent class elites in the ultimate void great cosmos, our supreme willpower is ranked in the top 5. The supreme will is that strong. Zhou Fight said in surprise, doesn't that mean that the Crimson Overlord's ranking is even higher? It's not like that. Spring Autumn Dharma Lord shook his head. Even though Crimson Overlord's strength is comparable to the supreme will, he has never made a move in the ultimate void great cosmos. No, he might have made a move, but very few people know. This is because Crimson Overlord has a lot of killing intent. Every time he finishes off his opponent, he will kill all the surrounding living beings. At its peak, the Supreme Will was stronger than the Crimson Overlord. However, after the Supreme Will forcibly tore apart the Eternal Continent and the River of Time and Space, the Supreme Will was injured. Ever since then, in the battle between the Supreme Will and the Crimson Overlord, the Crimson Overlord had the upper hand. Zhou Zhou nodded in satisfaction. It was no wonder that the news he had heard was that in the current era, the Crimson Overlord had been suppressing the Supreme Will and had no choice but to start the Lord of all Races contest to select the Supreme Lord Reserve Army to help him deal with the Crimson Overlord. It turned out that the Supreme Will was injured because of the Eternal Mainland and the River of Time and Space. Alright, let's not talk about that. Let me tell you how to snatch the second reserve army of the Supreme Lord from me. After Spring Autumn Dharma Lord finished speaking, he could not help but laugh. Zhou Fight's expression was also a little strange. Spring Autumn Dharma Lord continued, unlike Lord of 10,000 Evil's ultimate void battlefield, after the Supreme Will snatched this eternal mainland and that space-time river, although I encountered some trouble in the beginning, those troubles have long been resolved by me. The eternal mainland and the space-time river are all in my hands now. If you want to defeat me and become the second reserve army of the Supreme Lord, there's only one way to control the eternal continent and the river of space and time. That's to defeat the space-time life form I summoned. Some of these life forms come from the past, some from the future, some from the modern era, and most of them are experts from other timelines. These experts from different times and even timelines are all prodigies of various eras. You need to defeat them before you can come to me. After you personally defeat me in my Myriad Worlds Legion, you can obtain everything from me. At that time, it's not impossible for me to bow down to you. After Spring Autumn Dharma Lord finished speaking, he laughed loudly. Then, he looked at Zhou Fight seriously. Of course, the prerequisite is, defeat me. As your second brother, I can remind you. Don't come to me without the strength of the lowest low-level will transcendence. You'll lose. Chapter 1822, The First Battle on the Eternal Continent. 1. Zhou Fight did not say anything and only nodded. He knew that the Spring Autumn Dharma Lord was telling the truth. Furthermore, he had no intention of finding trouble with this second brother before he had the strength of a transcendent will. Now that I've unleashed my full combat strength, I can probably have the strength of a top Supreme Will Realm expert. After I advances to the Supreme Will Realm, I can have my own will skill. At that time, I might be able to fight a low-level will powerhouse. Even if I can't defeat them, I should be able to guarantee that I won't die. However, when you're a low-level Supreme Will Realm expert, it's better not to challenge the Spring Autumn Dharma Lord. The chances of winning are too low. If I want to challenge him, I can only challenge the Spring Autumn Dharma Lord when my strength increases to the mid-level Supreme Will Realm or even the high-level Supreme Will Realm. This is the safest and the highest chance of winning. Many thoughts surfaced in Zhou Fight's mind and he quickly had an idea. It would be best if his strength increased to the high-level Supreme Will Realm to have the highest chance of winning against the Spring Autumn Dharma Lord. When he was at mid-level Supreme Will Realm, he could also try to challenge it, but his chances of winning were not guaranteed. As for challenging the Spring Autumn Dharma Lord after advancing to the Will Transcendence Realm, even though it was a little too shameless, it was not impossible. However, that would take too long. Zhou Fight did not want to spend so much time challenging it now. He was too cowardly. In any case, it was just a challenge, not a life-and-death battle. There was no harm in giving it a try in advance. If he really could not defeat it, he would consider advancing to the Will Transcendence level. The Spring Autumn Dharma Lord nodded slightly when he saw that Zhou Fight did not refuse. If that's the case, look at the opponent's second brother prepared for you now. Then look at the opponent's second brother prepared for you now. With that, the Spring Autumn Dharma Lord suddenly soared into the sky and flew above the Eternal Continent. He extended his right hand and saw an emerald green fishing rod appear in his hand. The surface of this golden scepter was engraved with complicated patterns. At the top of the scepter, there was an illusory river of time and space flowing slowly. It seemed to reflect all the past, modern, and future of the myriad worlds. This scepter was called the Eternal Scepter. It was the accompanying treasure of this eternal continent. Its grade had shockingly reached the low level, beyond holy artifact level. Furthermore, it also had extremely high growth potential. As the Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord's strength increased, it was not impossible for him to advance to the mid-level or even the high-level holy artifact. This eternal scepter was immediately obtained after the Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord completely controlled the eternal continent and the river of time and space. It was given to the expert who controlled him by the eternal continent. The Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord raised the scepter and said softly, "Time is like a dream. The afterglow of the past has reappeared. Dead heroes, listen to my orders. Show yourselves." At the end, the Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord roared. As soon as he finished speaking, the eternal scepter suddenly released an invisible spatial ripple. These ripples quickly covered the entire eternal mainland and the long river of time and space. Zhou Fai looked at the scene in front of him. Suddenly, he widened his eyes. Figures emitting powerful auras appeared from the eternal continent and the river of time and space, looking coldly at Zhou Fai in the sky. There were countless of them at a glance. When Zhou Fai saw this scene, while he was shocked, he suddenly realized something. It was no wonder he had never heard of the Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord having his own Lord faction. Why would he need a Lord's faction with this summoning ability? He could surpass countless Lord factions by directly summoning them. At a glance, the lowest was a historical life form at the God Spirit level. The highest was even an expert with a will that transcended. Even though there were not many of them, they were still extremely terrifying. Even if the Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord did not personally attack, just letting these historical life forms attack could kill enemies with transcendent wills, right? Third brother. Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord smiled and said, "This is your next enemy. They are all prodigies of various eras and even timelines. After you finish off all these geniuses, you can lead your army to challenge me." Zhou Fai took a deep breath and said, "Second brother, you really surprised me. No wonder you said that if you don't have the strength of a transcendent will, you shouldn't challenge you. With just these summoned geniuses, I'm afraid it's very difficult for ordinary low-level will transcendence experts to come in front of you." Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord smiled. "That's right. However, there are limits to my summoning technique. That is, these prodigies and heroes can only exist on this eternal continent and the river of time and space. Once they exceed this range, they will quickly disappear. It's a very restrictive method." The Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord did not care about the limitations of this method. Zhou Fai nodded slightly. If there were no restrictions, this summoning method was indeed invincible. However, even with such a huge restriction, the Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord could rely on this method to be invincible in this eternal continent. Even a mid-level expert with a transcendent will would probably find it extremely difficult to kill the Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord guarding the eternal continent. As for leaving the eternal continent, Zhou Fai believed that this Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord definitely had a way to deal with the enemy after leaving the eternal continent, such as his myriad worlds chaos pool. Chapter 1823, The First Battle on the Eternal Continent. 2. The Spring-Autumn Dharma Lord had said that the myriad worlds chaos pool was his strongest attack. Then, he observed the entire eternal continent with the power of his will. Soon, he chose a place. He immediately gathered his soldiers and headed to that spot. They arrived at the location chosen by Zhou Fai. As soon as they landed, Zhou Fai and the god spirits under him vaguely knew the name of the place under their feet. Eternal Continent Primitive Plateau. The temperature here was extremely low. Even the god spirits under Zhou Fai felt a trace of cold. Only Zhou Fai and the experts above the supreme god level did not feel anything about the low temperature here. The temperature here is not right. Zhou Fai muttered to himself. The low temperature here was probably affected by the power of the eternal continent. Otherwise, how could it make even god spirits feel cold? He stepped hard on the ground and realized that the ground under his feet seemed to have frozen and become extremely hard. Zhou Fai could evaluate that it was probably difficult for ordinary supreme gods to cause damage to this land. He looked around. He realized that the historical heroes around him were also looking at them. As for the historical life forms that were originally on the eternal continent, they were doing their own things. Very few of them revealed hostility towards them. Only a portion of historical life forms that were naturally combative and bloodthirsty revealed their desire to attack to them. Just as Zhou Fight was thinking. Kill! A faint voice sounded. Then, a giant holding a huge blade rushed towards Zhou Fight and the rest. The giant's voice was like a fuse, instantly igniting the killing intent of many historical heroes and historical life forms present. They charged at Zhou Fight without any regard for their own safety. As the two sides were relatively close, they quickly engaged the army of the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom. The sound and fluctuation of all kinds of divine artifacts colliding and law skills colliding instantly filled the entire battlefield. All the historical heroes and historical life forms were fighting the divine army of the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom with all their might. Fortunately, most of the divine army of the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom had supreme soldier types. Coupled with the enhancement of other aspects, even when facing this group of historical geniuses, they did not fall into a disadvantageous position. Only a small number of top geniuses could suppress or even kill the soldiers and god spirits of the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom. Zhou Fight was secretly surprised when he saw this. As expected of a prodigy from various eras and timelines. Under the enhancement of the supreme soldier type and other aspects, the soldiers and god spirits under he were no longer inferior to or even exceeded the strength of most so-called prodigies. However, when facing this group of dead creatures, there was actually a portion that would be suppressed. This was the first time Zhou Fight had encountered such a thing since he had a supreme soldier type. Then, he smiled. Great! It would be better if there was some difficulty. How could the soldiers and god spirits under him improve through combat when facing an opponent without any difficulty? Only when facing such an opponent could the group of lunatic soldiers under him improve under the pressure of a powerful enemy. Zhou Fight had originally wanted to attack to relieve the pressure on his soldiers and god spirits. There were too many them, and there were even more historical heroes coming from all directions to provide support after all. However, he had suddenly changed his mind. It was a rare opportunity for training. It would be a pity if he destroyed it. He simply stood in the middle of the army and looked down at the eternal continent under his feet. Then, he realized something. The historical heroes and historical life forms that besieged them actually came from the place called the primitive plateau under their feet. As for the place outside the primitive plateau, even though they had heard the sounds of battle here, they did not seem to have any intention of providing support. When Zhou Fight saw this, he looked at Spring Autumn Dharma Lord, who was also looking at him in the distance. He realized that the other party was also looking at him in surprise. The corners of his mouth curled up slightly. It seems like my second brother isn't being shameless. He didn't directly get all the historical heroes summoned by him to attack me together. Instead, he attacked me region by region. This also gives me time to adapt and develop. Otherwise, if all the historical heroes really attack me together, I'm afraid I won't be able to bear the consequences. Just those 3 historical heroes with transcendent wills are not something I can deal with. This was naturally good news for them. Even though he was now top-notch in strength and the god spirits under him were not weak, he was far from being a match for these historical heroes summoned by the Spring Autumn Dharma Lord. However, he was confident that they would be defeated one day. It was fine as long as he developed for a period of time. He looked at the situation. On the battlefield, other than a few soldiers and god spirits of the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom being suppressed by those historical heroes, most of the other god spirits of the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom still maintained a huge advantage. At this rate, the historical heroes of the primitive plateau would be wiped out by them sooner or later. Zhou Fight nodded slightly. It seemed quite simple. At the same time, the myriad worlds chaos pool. However, Zhou Fight did not know that the Spring Autumn Dharma Lord was looking at them at this moment. He was also very surprised. Then, he chuckled. They actually treated the historical heroes I summoned as training tools. Even though my third brother has only risen for a very short period of time, he seems to have developed very well in all aspects. Even the soldiers and god spirits around him are so heroic and powerful. Looks like I underestimated my third brother. Then, I'll make it more difficult for you. Spring Autumn Dharma Lord chuckled before his heart stirred. In the next second, he saw that in the 4 regions around the primitive plateau that were about the same size as the primitive plateau, the historical heroes who appeared suddenly seemed to have taken something. Their eyes were red as they rushed towards the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom's army that was fighting on the primitive plateau and quickly fought with the soldiers and god spirits of the Blazing Sun Divine Kingdom. When the Spring Autumn Dharma Lord saw that the situation on the battlefield had instantly changed, and that even Zhou Fight had no choice but to personally fight the attacking Supreme Will Realm historical heroes, he could not help but laugh. It was as if some bad taste in his heart had been satisfied. Enjoy it, third brother. This is just the beginning. You want to challenge me? It's not that simple. Spring Autumn Dharma Lord smiled and muttered to himself. Then, he turned around and returned to his seat. As he continued fishing, he muttered to himself in anticipation. My third brother is in the Eternal Continent now. Even though it's a little far from me, it shouldn't affect the influence of his luck on me, right? The Spring Autumn Dharma Lord continued fishing nervously and expectantly. On Zhou Fight's side, he was also fighting 5 low-level Supreme Will Realm experts, 2 mid-level Supreme Will Realm experts, and a low-level Supreme Will Realm expert. At this moment, he had already activated King Hu's strength had increased to the mid-level Supreme Will Realm. Coupled with his Will Holy artifacts, his combat strength had already reached high-level Supreme Will Realm. Even so, he still felt immense pressure when facing these 8 Supreme Will Realm experts. Something's wrong. There's something wrong with these 8 Supreme Will Realm experts. They are all prodigies and Supreme Will Realm experts who can fight above their level. They are definitely not something ordinary Supreme Will Realm experts can compare to. Thoughts quickly flashed through Zhou Fight's mind as he dealt with the joint attack of the 8 Supreme Will Realm experts. From the battle situation alone, he was currently on par with these 8 Supreme Will Realm experts. As Zhou Fight fought, he looked at the Fire Heart Will and Dao Breaking Will. In the end, his heart sank. The 2 Supreme Will Realm experts, they, were also facing 2 Supreme Will Realm experts respectively. At this moment, they had already fallen into an absolute danger. It would probably not be long before they were killed. Naturally, Zhou Fight would not allow that to happen. Those were the 2 newly advanced Supreme Will Realm cultivators he had just obtained. It was very precious. Chapter 1824, Intense Battle. 1. I didn't think I'd need you so soon. Zhou Fight looked at the current situation and said softly. Then, he flipped his right hand, and an ancient stone tablet that emitted a faint yellow light appeared in his palm. It was the high-level Will Holy artifact Yellow River Stone Slab. An endless stream of power of the Yellow River flowed out of the Yellow River slate and surged into Zhou Fight's divine body with a thought from him. Zhou Fight instantly advanced from mid-level Supreme Will Realm to the high-level Supreme Will Realm. A small increase in strength had greatly increased Zhou Fight's strength. He already had the combat strength of the high-level Supreme Will Realm. Now that he had raised his realm to this level, his strength had instantly increased to the top Supreme Will Realm combat strength. This instantly reduced the pressure on him when facing these 8 historical heroes of the Supreme Will Realm. He suddenly disappeared on the spot. In the next moment, he appeared in front of a low-level Supreme Will Realm expert. Then, his sword light flashed without a trace and instantly slashed at the other party's head. When the other party's head was cut off by the sword, a helmet phantom appeared on the surface. It was clearly some kind of Will Holy artifact specially used to protect the head. However, in the face of this Will Holy artifact, Zhou Fight's Xian Yuan divine sword was only slightly blocked. Then, it directly cut through this Will Holy artifact and cut off his head without stopping, decapitating him. This historical hero at the low-level Supreme Will Realm revealed a shocked expression, but the light in his eyes quickly dimmed. In less than a few seconds, he was completely dead. His Will Origin Core was directly destroyed by the will power attached to the Zhou Battle Sword. It was impossible for him to survive. Zhou Zhou shook his head inwardly. Even though Supreme Will Realm experts were almost invincible against the gods in the God Spirit system, no matter how many God Spirits, True God Tiers, Master God Tiers, and Supreme Gods there were, they could not hurt a single Supreme Will Realm expert. This was because the body of a Supreme Will Realm expert was formed by the purest power of will. The core was the Will Origin Core located in the brain. As long as the Will Origin Core was not destroyed, willpower experts would never die. And God Spirits could not do anything to the power of will. Therefore, God Spirits' human wave tactics were useless to Supreme Will Realm experts. However, when a Supreme Will Realm expert was killed by a willpower expert at the same level through the destruction Will Origin Core, the difficulty of killing them was even much simpler than killing a divine spirit of the same level. God Spirits still had many clones, revival methods, and so on. This made it more troublesome for God Spirits to kill because they needed to prevent many unknown methods. However, when willpower level experts fought each other, once the willpower origin nucleus was destroyed, they would really be dead. No matter what method they used, unless they mastered a willpower skill that specialized in self-protection or a resurrection-type willpower holy artifact, it was extremely difficult for them to survive. For example, this low-level Supreme Will Realm expert. He did not have a resurrection-type will skill or will holy artifact. Once his will origin core was destroyed by Zhou Fight, he would not even have the chance to leave behind his last words. When the other Supreme Will Realm experts saw that Zhou Fight had actually killed a Supreme Will Realm expert among they so easily, they revealed shocked expressions. They were all legendary historical heroes. They were all prodigies who could fight above their level and had many tricks up their sleeves. Not to mention a low-level Supreme Will Realm expert facing a mid-level Supreme Will Realm expert, even if they faced an high-level Supreme Will Realm expert head-on, they still had the confidence to protect themselves and escape even if they did not have the means to kill them. Unexpectedly, not only did Zhou Fight, who had been suppressed by they previously, suddenly break through their suppression, but he also instantly killed a low-level Supreme Will Realm expert. Even though this low-level Supreme Will Realm expert was the weakest among them, it still shocked them. This guy is very strong. A young-looking historical hero with a cautious gaze said calmly, "We have to cooperate and stop fighting for ourselves." Okay. The other 6 Supreme Will Realm experts nodded and agreed without hesitation. They were all historical heroes of various eras and timelines. Naturally, they would not only know how to fight alone in the face of danger. In the blink of an eye, they immediately joined forces to deal with Zhou Fight after they quickly communicated their methods. One of the mid-level Supreme Will Realm heroes holding a circular array formation, a Will Holy Artifact treasure, muttered something and activated the Supreme Will Realm array to suppress Zhou Fight's strength. Another beautiful woman with an enchanting figure and charming eyes gently fanned the round fan in her hand and charmed Zhou Fight with the power of a mid-level Supreme Will Realm will. The other 5 historical heroes at the Supreme Will Realm, especially the 2 historical heroes with the strength of the high-level Supreme Will Realm, held their respective Will Holy Artifacts and attacked Zhou Fight with all their might. The other 3 historical heroes at the Supreme Will Realm helped these 2 top experts either assassinate, cast spells, or assist them in attacking Zhou Fight. Zhou Fight felt the layers of restraint and suppression on his body and the 2 historical heroes of the high-level Supreme Will Realm who were about to attack him. Not only was he not afraid, he even felt his divine blood boil faintly. He seemed to hear a series of angry roars. Fight! 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 Even if the enemy is outnumbered, I'm not afraid. These voices were not illusionary, but the racial will contained in the various top-notch bloodline inheritances in his body. Chapter 1825, Intense Battle. 2. When Zhou Fight encountered danger, these bloodlines were also infuriated. They roared and wanted Zhou Fight to counterattack them. This was the first time Zhou Fight had encountered such a situation. However, it didn't matter. Quiet. Zhou Fight calmly appeased the boiling divine blood in his body. I'm not afraid of them, a mere product that doesn't belong to our era. After appeasement of his bloodline, Zhou Fight calmly looked at the 2 high-level Supreme Will Realm experts rushing towards him. These 2 powerful enemies that were charging over had already been strengthened by other Supreme Will Realm experts, and their strength was even greater than before. The moment they rushed over, Zhou Fight instantly appeared behind them and slashed at the head of one of the enemies. However, the 2 of them reacted extremely quickly and instantly changed their positions. They turned around and counterattacked Zhou Fight. Zhou Fight raised the Xian Yuan divine sword in his hand and blocked their attacks. Then, the 2 gods quickly fought. Boom, 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 boom. The battle between 3 top-notch supreme willpower experts had already affected an area of more than 1,000 light-years. This was the result of restraining them. Otherwise, the impact would only be greater. At this moment, the low-level Supreme Will Realm assassin hiding in the void was a little helpless when he saw this scene. The range of the battle between these 3 top-notch experts was too large. He couldn't interfere in the battle between them even if he wanted to. Thankfully, he was very patient and decided to continue waiting for an opportunity to attack. In his timeline, he was a top-notch assassin. He had even stabbed a high-level Supreme Will Realm expert, and he had left unscathed. Ever since that battle, his reputation had completely risen in his timeline, becoming the strongest assassin in his timeline. Even though this common people's regal was so powerful that he was shocked, he did not feel that he had no chance of winning. On the other side, the mid-level Supreme Will Realm expert who was continuously bewitching Zhou Fight was looking at him in surprise. He muttered, "How is that possible? My bewitching sacred eye can even control a high-level Supreme Will Realm expert for a period of time. This guy's strength is clearly only that of a grade 4 Supreme God tier. He relied on some secret technique to increase his strength to the high-level Supreme Will Realm. How can he withstand my charm technique? Could it be that his mystic technique to increase his strength is so comprehensive? This enchanting woman felt that it was a little tricky. Fruit Noello. He had guessed correctly. Under normal circumstances, Zhou Fight would indeed not be able to withstand the other party's charming offensive. Even if he used King and stacked the power of the will of 150 low-level Supreme Will Realm experts, he still could not withstand the other party's charm attack after all. Even the willpower of 150 low-level Supreme Will Realm experts was not as powerful as the willpower of a high-level Supreme Will Realm expert after all. This was a qualitative difference. It could not be made up for by quantity alone. However, Zhou Fight had long grasped a will-holy artifact called Holy Scripture of the Heart. Even though this will-holy artifact was only a mid-level will-holy artifact, when combined with the willpower of these 150 low-level Supreme Will Realm experts, it happened to be comparable to the will defense of a top Supreme Will Realm expert. It was precisely because of this that this Supreme Willpower Realm expert who was good at seduction could not charm Zhou Fight. He could not even affect his battle and determine the outcome of the battlefield. At the same time, through the trembling of the Book of Souls, Zhou Fight knew that someone had launched a will attack on him. However, after discovering that it did not affect him much, he did not care. He turned to focus on dealing with the two high-level Supreme Will Realm experts. They were indeed powerful, especially with the enhancement of the other Supreme Will Realm experts, they were almost comparable to top Supreme Will Realm experts. However, there was still a gap between him and Zhou Fight. Therefore, less than a moment later, Zhou Fight, who was very sensitive to battle, acutely seized the opportunity to fight and instantly arrived beside the high-level Supreme Will Realm expert who was good at martial arts. He pushed away the other party's palms with a punch and pierced his sword into the other party's glabella, shattering the will origin nucleus in the other party's glabella. He did not have time to listen to the kill notification beside his ear. He aimed his hand at the corpse of this high-level Supreme Will Realm expert and put it into his number 1 treasure vault. When the other high-level Supreme Will Realm expert saw this, he was immediately shocked. He never expected that one of the two high-level Supreme Will Realm experts, he and the other party, would actually be killed by the other party in a 2-on-1 situation. From the other party's skilled and profound movements, the other party was clearly a martial arts expert who had reached the Supreme Realm. Is this guy really a grade 4 Supreme God? He roared in his heart. However, he also knew that it was useless to roar now. He immediately called for the other surviving Supreme Will Realm experts to attack Zhou Fight together. He knew in his heart. The two high-level Supreme Will Realm experts, them, could not stop the other party from stealing someone's life. If he still had to resist it alone, he would almost have no chance of survival. They had to attack him together. In a one-on-one battle, there was no way out. With so many people attacking, they might be able to expose some of the other party's flaws. The 6 Supreme Will Realm experts surrounded Zhou Fight again. Unlike the previous siege, they were actually cooperating with a Supreme Will Realm military formation. The formation of the 6 Supreme Will Realm experts immediately gave Zhou Fight immense pressure. We have to kill a Supreme Will Realm expert first. At that time, the power of this military formation will naturally decrease greatly. Zhou Fight swept his gaze and found one of the low-level Supreme Will Realm historical heroes. This historical hero was the Supreme Will Realm expert who had wanted to use his charm ability to control Zhou Fight. When he noticed Zhou Fight's gaze on him, he immediately cursed inwardly. However, before he could use any means, Zhou Fight had already arrived in front of him with the void travel technique. Then, he slashed out the origin core of will in his mind. Another Supreme Will Realm expert died. The expressions of the other historical heroes of the Supreme Will Realm immediately changed when they saw this. At this moment, the only upper-level Supreme Will Realm expert roared, "Attack this guy now!" The other Supreme Will Realm experts immediately reacted. This fellow had just forcefully killed the low-level Supreme Will Realm expert and was now in the gap before the next attack. This gap was the best time for them to attack. They immediately used their strongest offensive methods to attack Zhou Fight without another word. Zhou Fight was immediately hit by all kinds of willpower skills. For a moment, the world collapsed, space was in chaos, and all kinds of will phenomena appeared. When the other Supreme Will Realm experts saw the scene caused by this joint attack, they were secretly shocked. They felt that no matter what method they used, they would not be able to survive against an attack of this level. They were relieved at the thought of this. Even though that young Supreme Will Realm expert was ridiculously strong, he definitely could not survive such a terrifying attack. When they came back to their senses and thought about it, they still found this young man unbelievable. They were all prodigies from various eras or timelines, but facing the young man just now, they felt that he was the real prodigy, while they was as ordinary as a mortal in front of him. Come on! This person will definitely die. Let's report to the Lord Justice. The Supreme Will Realm expert in the lead said. The other Supreme Will Realm experts nodded and prepared to leave. At this moment, they seemed to have sensed something and their bodies trembled. Then, they turned their heads abruptly and stared intently at the center of the offensive phenomenon. A figure slowly walked out from the terrifying offensive phenomenon as if nothing had touched him. He ignored the tragic situation around him and looked at them with a faint smile. It was Zhou Fight.